Chapter 644, Forging the Wargod. The seven kingdoms were unified by the Qingmi kingdom. Although they looked powerful now, it was not the same for the middle and upper tier kingdoms. The kingdoms were already like this, let alone the kingdoms. Li Lingtian's considerations were based on the mindset of the divine martial continent's powerhouse. Powerful powerhouses had their own attitudes. 11. The Moonsong Kingdom has 12 inferior kingdoms, 12 second-class kingdoms, and 12 upper-class kingdoms. Qingmi is only a low-grade country. The few countries that have been unified are also low-grade countries. There are still 5 low-grade countries left. If nothing unexpected happens, in a short period of time, we should be able to unify the 5 low-grade countries. After combining the strength of the low-grade countries, it should be enough to compete with the middle-grade and even high-grade countries. Huangfu Yuyan did not have any objections to Li Lingtian's opinion. After a moment of silence, she analyzed the current situation and forces in Moonsong Kingdom. Although they were all countries, the difference between them was huge. The inferior kingdoms like Qingmi were already powerful, let alone the middle and upper kingdoms. What she meant was that after these countries were unified, they would reorganize and consolidate the territory they obtained. This way, they would have the power to compete with the middle-sized countries. If he wanted to strengthen himself by snowballing the war and starting from scratch, he would have to double his growth. Otherwise, he would not be able to go far. We don't have to worry about dealing with the lower-tier countries. The main thing is that our current strength is not enough, so we can't suffer too many losses in the war. We should try our best to gather the hearts of the people. It's best if the countries submit. If it's a battle method of mutual destruction, that's the worst strategy in the art of war. Only by subduing the enemy without fighting is the best strategy. Wherever our army passes, we must have an unstoppable momentum. We must make our opponents lose their morale and courage to resist. This way, our gains will be even greater. We will gather super experts and form a super army. Only then will we have the capital to truly conquer the world. Li Lingtian smiled. He was beginning to enjoy the feeling of being in control of the overall situation and being able to strategize and guide the country. This feeling was very good. However, while he enjoyed it, he had to understand his position and situation. Only by truly becoming stronger could he control the world. The purpose of controlling the world was to strengthen himself and give himself a foothold. Oh right, brother Lingtian, with your 5th-level martial emperor and your cultivation base, what's the chance of you killing a 5th-level martial saint when you encounter a powerhouse? Xianyuan Yingying didn't know much about war, nor was she in the mood to care about it. She was only concerned about Li Lingtian's cultivation base. As long as Li Lingtian was strong enough, she could have whatever she wanted and no one would be able to threaten her. Between warriors, although the difference in realms is important, there are some warriors whose abilities are abnormal and beyond the imagination of their peers. Take me for example. I have the chance to defeat a 5th heaven martial saint. So, even if I break through and my strength increases a lot, it's still very dangerous to encounter some super abnormal experts. However, in general, there aren't many freakish super experts. Even if I encounter those experts, I have treasures to deal with them. To deal with an ordinary martial saint, the 5th sky of the martial saint realm is enough for me to fight. Li Lingtian looked at Xianyuan Yingying with a smile and told her about his abilities. Although he mentioned a few unexpected opportunities in the divine martial continent, he still managed to put Xianyuan Yingying at ease in the end. Moreover, he still had many methods to cultivate. Those divine powers were all heaven-defying existences. For example, God's fury descending from the heavens. These heaven-grade divine powers all had grades. The 3 moves of God's fury descending from the heavens also had 3 levels. He had only cultivated the 1st level. If he cultivated the 2nd level, it would be equivalent to a top-notch heaven-grade divine power. He might even reach the saint grade. As well as the true dragon body protection, these divine power cultivation techniques were all heaven-defying. As long as they were cultivated, they would be extremely terrifying. After that, Li Lingtian chatted with the girls for a long time. They were all talking about the war before they started talking about some fun topics. They were all husband and wife matters. Xianyuan Yingying, Ge, and Little White all retreated to their rooms. They were girls who had sex. Even though they were about the same age as Tang Zimeng and the others, they were not Li Lingtian's women after all. They did not have the face to stay in this place. In 2 days, I'll stabilize my realm and personally supervise the construction of the Wargod. Let's go and rest. Li Lingtian stood up and headed to his room. Huangfu Yuyan and Shun Mei followed him. After that, they returned to their respective residences. With the breakthrough in their cultivation and the increase in their strength, they could rest in peace. As for the battle, it didn't matter to him at all. He would only take action at the critical moment. Naturally, he would not delay his cultivation for the sake of the battle. He had to prioritize his training. If he could not even prioritize his training, he would not be Li Lingtian. For the next few days, Li Lingtian cultivated in Yuran Palace while Tang Zhenji and the other girls cultivated in Yuran Palace with Qingqing. From time to time, battle reports came from outside, all of which were good news. This was also something they had expected. As long as there were no accidents, the war would not fail. 7 million soldiers and 3 legions. With such a shocking lineup, what other country could resist the army of Qing Xian? Basically, none of the countries resisted and all of them surrendered. One by one, the various kingdoms submitted to Qing Xian. In order to protect the status of the royal family, they all submitted. However, Heaven Demon King, Marshal Saint Ming Luo, and Marshal Saint Yunhao were also observing the royal family situation. If it really didn't work, they could only replace them. Changing dynasties was because they didn't want parasites to appear under their rule, which would affect other countries. In 10 days, the 5 inferior kingdoms were united. A total of 12 inferior kingdoms were all united by Qing Xian. Qing Xian quickly reorganized their army. This was because they all understood that there was no reason to stop when the war began. They had to be prepared for the war at any time. If they were not careful, they would welcome the arrival of the war. As the commander-in-chief, Marshal Saint Ming Luo and the others dared not be careless. They were Li Lingtian's men and understood his character and style. He would strike as he pleased without giving anyone any time to think. Just like before, the martial emperor powerhouses stayed behind and entered the divine martial army. Half of the martial saint powerhouses joined the army while the other half returned to Qing Xian to become Li Lingtian's guards. These powerhouses had been carefully selected. Even if they affected the army, they could not allow the dangerous martial saint to be by Li Lingtian's side. The kingdom was shaken, the 12 middle-tier kingdoms were shocked, and the 12 upper-tier kingdoms were eyeing them covetously, wanting to imitate Qing Xian. However, now that the Qing Xian kingdom had unified all the lower-tier kingdoms, their influence had greatly increased. With a huge army of tens of millions, the 3 legions were like wolves and tigers. They were bound to destroy the enemy. The tremors outside did not affect Li Lingtian's peaceful cultivation. After cultivating for a few days and stabilizing his realm, he left Yuran Palace and gathered all the array and artifact grandmasters. The war outside is coming. We can't just sit there and wait for death. We have to take the initiative to attack and sweep the world. Have you completed the mission I gave you? Li Lingtian came to the depths of the palace and asked loudly as he looked at the thousands of weapon refiners and array masters. He looked at all the experts with a sharp gaze and slowly sat down. We've completed young Master D's mission. We've comprehended the mysteries of arrays and the construction of the Wargod. We've completed young Master D's mission. We've understood the mysteries of refining and have the blueprint of the Wargod in our hearts. Over 1,000 grandmasters of array and craftsmanship answered respectfully, their hearts filled with excitement and admiration. They were puzzled when they saw Li Lingtian's blueprint. However, they were stunned when they realized the true power of the Wargod. They had never expected the Wargod to possess such heaven-defying power. They could not understand how Li Lingtian came up with this idea. This was simply a god-tier civilization of the divine martial continent. It was countless times more powerful than a spaceship. They didn't know how much wisdom one had to have to figure out the structure of the Wargod. Was this something a young man in his 20s could think of? They wouldn't believe it even if they were beaten to death, but this blueprint had appeared in front of them. They could only accept the shock. Gradually, everyone was immersed in the blueprint, studying the structure and construction of the Wargod. He looked forward to the day when he could personally witness the appearance of the Wargod on the divine martial continent. He hoped that he could personally create the Wargod and achieve supreme glory. All right, I hereby announce that the construction of the Wargod will begin today. Li Lingtian announced loudly with a faint smile on his face. He had personally built the Wargod in the past. Now that he was only building an enhanced version of the Wargod, he was naturally very confident. Furthermore, the materials had been fully prepared during this period of time. As long as these array masters and artifact masters comprehended the blueprints, they could build the Wargod. We'll start building the Wargod today? Today is the day to build the Wargod. That's great, that's really great. I want to personally build the Wargod and let it shock the entire divine martial continent. How many materials do you need? If we build the Wargod, we will be invincible in the war. Instantly, all the array masters and artifact masters were extremely excited. They didn't expect that the Wargod would be built today. They thought that even if they were to build the Wargod, it wouldn't be any time soon. Now, they could already imagine the glory of the Wargod's birth. They could also imagine the countless kingdoms trembling before the Wargod. This time, I will personally supervise it. This is an enhanced version of the Wargod. Therefore, there can't be any problems. Even the slightest flaw can't be left behind. A few years ago, I created a Wargod. Once the Wargod was released, it swept through the Azure continent and Qingzhou. This Wargod is countless times more powerful than before. It's on a completely different level, so all of you have to put in 120% of your effort to build it. Li Lingtian looked pleased when he saw everyone's excitement. However, the fact that the Wargod had appeared in the world was a good way to calm them down. However, after mentioning the enhanced version, he also emphasized the problem a lot. This way, these array masters and artifact masters would be able to focus 120% on completing the Wargod. Chapter 645, News of the Empty Spirit Pearl. They were shocked by Li Lingtian's words. They thought that the Wargod had never appeared before, but who would have thought that Li Lingtian had already built the Wargod? This time, the forging was only an enhanced version. They were extremely surprised. It seemed that this young Master D in front of them was not someone they could understand at all. However, the more this was the case, the more excited they were. They were looking forward to seeing how powerful the Wargod was. We will put all our efforts into the Wargod. All the powerhouses answered respectfully. Li Lingtian then looked at the blueprint again and asked some questions. He wanted to see if these people really understood the blueprint. Otherwise, not only would it be a waste of materials, but it would also affect the progress of the Wargod. 10 Wargods would not take just 1 or 2 days. He hoped to complete all 10 Wargods before the war between the kingdoms. This way, they would become the trump cards of the army. This time, we need to build a total of 10 Wargods. However, this is your first time building such a huge warship. Therefore, you should try your best to build one. If you don't understand anything, you can ask me. After Li Lingtian finished speaking, he led all the powerhouses into the open space behind the palace. There was an open space with a radius of 1,000 miles behind the palace. It was left behind by the palace and had not been used yet. Moreover, the spiritual energy was very dense. This was the perfect place to build the Wargod. When they arrived at the empty space, they saw that countless array formations had been set up there. The array formations blocked the entire space. It was impossible for outsiders to peek into the situation inside. Inside, there were endless materials and thousands of martial arts grandmasters waiting. These people were all people of alchemy and craftsmanship. Although they couldn't really participate in the research, they needed to do it when building the Wargod. Following that, Li Lingtian selected 10 array masters and 10 craftsman masters to take charge of the construction of the Wargod. They were mainly responsible for the construction of the Wargod as well as handling some of the difficult issues. If they did not understand anything, they would look for Li Lingtian. Li Lingtian demanded that they be meticulous in every detail. The Wargod's forging started. Inside the array, more than 2,000 people were busy. As long as they had participated in the construction of the Wargod, they were not allowed to leave the formation before the Wargod was completed. There was a place to cultivate in the array formation, and there were also endless resources to use. This way, no one had anything to complain about. After all, the creation of the Wargod was a secret, and it required the full dedication of the people below. If they didn't put in the slightest bit of effort, it would affect the Wargod's power and success. After settling the construction of the Wargod, Li Lingtian left and returned to Yuran Palace. There were 2 holy array masters involved in the construction of the Wargod. The rest were all masters of arrays and crafts. They were all experts with rich experience. Naturally, they were not to be worried. After dealing with these matters, it would depend on luck and the movements of the kingdoms and other countries. If they didn't cause trouble for Qingxian before the Wargod was completed, they would be lucky. If Qingxian was attacked during this period of time, they would have to put in all their effort to accept the war between the other countries. After returning to Yuran Hall, Li Lingtian began to cultivate the 8 sounds of the heavenly demon. The first sound was the soul-drunken soul of all things, while the second sound was the heaven and earth destruction. The first sound was enough to destroy all the powerhouses below the martial emperor realm. If the second sound was executed to the extreme, it could instantly kill all the martial emperor realm powerhouses. Even a martial saint realm powerhouse might be killed. Li Lingtian managed to comprehend the 3rd note from the Tianma zither. This 3rd note was the life extermination war. The 2nd note was enough to kill a martial saint, but it required a lot of effort. If one could comprehend and cultivate the 3rd note, it would directly become the killing move of a martial saint. Li Lingtian could only cultivate the 1st and 2nd notes to the extreme. He could only exert the 3rd note with great difficulty. He had never used it before and dared not use it. This was because in the Qingxian kingdom, in the imperial palace, this zither music had directly destroyed the entire palace. He could only use this move when he met a heaven-defying expert. He had no choice but to use it. Unless he had no other choice, he wouldn't use the 3rd sound. The 3rd sound was harmful to the heavens. From time to time, the palace was filled with the sound of nature. Everyone thought that it was Li Lingtian's wife playing the music, but they did not know that it was Li Lingtian himself. Coupled with Li Lingtian's zither music, Huangfu Yuyan and Tang Qingyue were able to unleash the 9 heavens, 10 earths, godly needles and butterfly shadow. With such a combination, they could kill without a trace. As Li Lingtian cultivated, he was also comprehending alchemy and nourishing various treasures. Occasionally, he would go to the array to supervise the construction of the Wargod. If there were any problems that he didn't understand, he could look for him to solve them. When he looked for him to solve them, he could also learn some mysterious things. All the array and craftsmanship geniuses who could not solve their problems were easily solved by Li Lingtian. They were all in awe of him. Similarly, Li Lingtian would refine some Tier 7 peerless pills every once in a while. Even though they were Tier 7 peerless pills, Li Lingtian only used the elixir Tribulation Thunder Essence for 1/3 of the time. After all, the pill Tribulation Thunder Essence would be used up once. He estimated that a single pill Tribulation Thunder Essence should be able to attract 100 pill tribulations. Therefore, he had to save a little so that he wouldn't run out of pill Tribulation Thunder Essence when he refined Tier 8 and Tier 9 medicinal pills in the future. Seeing that Li Lingtian had incurred a pill tribulation in 1/3 of the time he took to refine the pill, he immediately became the idol and admiration of countless alchemists. Even alchemists from other countries joined the Divine Pill House one after another. Although the Alchemist Guild had some influence, Li Lingtian himself belonged to it. The Alchemist Guild did not say anything as they knew that Li Lingtian was only using the alchemist profession to influence the battle. Besides, the Alchemist Guild was a place where the strong were respected. The stronger you were, the more respect you would receive from your peers. Li Lingtian's strength was undoubtedly a legend. No one could surpass him. Even a Tier 8 Divine Alchemist was no match for Li Lingtian. Even a Tier 9 Divine Pill Refiner could not refine a Supreme Grade pill, let alone a mutated one. Even if they refined a mutated pill, it would not be Supreme Grade. Li Lingtian's future was limitless and it was not good to offend him. All he could do was turn a blind eye to it. Furthermore, the Alchemist Guild was openly getting close to Li Lingtian. As a result, countless powerhouses were stunned. They immediately understood that a figure like Li Lingtian must have been roped in by the Alchemist Guild and joined them. The Alchemist Guild was one of the top 10 super forces in the Divine Martial Continent. It was an unshakable force, and no one dared to provoke or offend it. Moreover, this Alchemist Guild was open and public. Alchemist experts came from the 5 continents, and alchemists from various forces were inside. 2/3 of the elixirs refined by Li Lingtian were sent to the army. The Martial Saints and Supreme Martial Emperor powerhouses received elixirs to enhance their cultivation. 1/3 of the elixirs were in the hands of the experts of the Freedom King dynasty. As long as they were experts of the Freedom King dynasty, they would have a chance to obtain them regardless of whether they joined or not. Moreover, Li Lingtian never needed to trade the pills he refined. Instead, he would gift them to powerhouses who were pleasing to his eyes or powerhouses who were about to make a breakthrough. Instantly, it attracted the attention of countless powerhouses. Li Lingtian would not be stingy even if it was an opposing powerhouse and would reward them as well. This was because he had once said that there were no eternal enemies and friends in the world. Regardless of whether you were an enemy or a friend, as long as you reached the right time and opportunity, as long as you reached the critical moment of breaking through, you would have a chance to obtain the medicinal pill. Such boldness had won the admiration of countless powerhouses. Even if they were enemies on the surface and were not convinced on the surface, they were already impressed by Li Lingtian in their hearts. They understood that they would not really go against Li Lingtian when they met him in the future. They had owed him a favor and they would lose in their hearts when they faced such a powerhouse. This kind of heaven-defying spirit was something that no one could achieve. However, Li Lingtian would not refine pills below Tier 6 because he was no longer interested. In Southern Peak City, martial saints and martial emperors could be seen from time to time. This was because they were looking forward to seeing Li Lingtian refine pills. They were hoping to obtain a peerless mutated great rejuvenating pill and advance to a higher realm. In the army, Li Lingtian was the soul of the army and he was like a god. No one dared to address Li Lingtian by his name. They could only address him as Young Master D or Saint Alchemist. Even if there were people with the same name as Li Lingtian, they could only change their names because Li Lingtian was a legend. As the days passed, Li Lingtian had just finished refining a cauldron of peerless grade great rejuvenating pills. He then returned to Yuran Palace to quickly elevate his cultivation base. The matter had come because it was very important. Young Lord, the Sky Spirit Pearl has appeared in the Heaven Fire Mountain range of the Feng nation. Longda whispered to Li Lingtian when he saw him coming out. He repeated the news to Li Lingtian. A few days ago, Longda's subordinates who were searching for treasures and materials had heard that the empty spirit pearl had appeared in the Heaven Fire Mountain range of the Feng nation. This empty spirit pearl was a supreme treasure. It could change the attributes of any expert and quickly increase the speed of a martial artist's cultivation. According to legend, the owner of this ethereal pearl could increase his cultivation speed by several times. Also, no matter what kind of spiritual energy it was, it could be transformed into the owner's own spiritual energy. The appearance of such a treasure immediately caused countless experts to fight for it. Even though there was still some time before the treasure appeared, countless experts had already formed factions and secretly killed their opponents. The powerhouses under Longda were all martial emperors and martial saints. This news had reached Longda immediately. Get ready. We must get this empty spirit pearl. Send half of the Wargod Legion to the Heavenly Fire Mountain range of the Feng nation, but we cannot alert the enemy. Li Lingtian's face lit up with excitement when he heard that. Some time ago, he had felt that something was missing when he opened Qing's ethereal body. Now that he had heard about the ethereal pearl, he was confident that he would be able to open Qing's ethereal body completely as long as he obtained the ethereal pearl. Chapter 646. Heading to the Feng nation. Since such a treasure had appeared, there would definitely be countless experts fighting for it. This was almost a treasure of fortune. With such a treasure, he could quickly increase his cultivation and reduce the time he spent cultivating. The Feng nation was a top-tier nation. Among the top-tier nations, their strength was ranked in the top 5. Even the current Qingxian nation was not a match for the Feng nation. This time, there would definitely be countless experts who wanted to fight for the treasure. Martial emperors and martial saints would be everywhere. He didn't want to go alone. No matter how confident he was, he couldn't be so confident that he could resist all the experts in the world alone. Moreover, his identity was very sensitive. After being discovered by those experts, they would definitely kill him. There were 50 martial saint powerhouses in the Wargod Legion now. There was a high chance that he would bring more than 20 martial saint powerhouses to fight for the empty spirit pearl. At the very least, they would know who had obtained this treasure, and they could use the army to kill it. This subordinate will go and prepare now. After long bowed, he left the Yuran palace and headed outside. His current status was unmatched by anyone other than Li Lingtian. Everything he did was on behalf of Li Lingtian and everyone had to cooperate with him. Furthermore, he was Li Lingtian's guard and a loyal guard. Naturally, he had to consider everything for Li Lingtian. After Long De left, Li Lingtian went to Huangfu Yuyan's place and told her about the Void Spirit Pearl. Big brother Lingtian wants to fight for the Spatial Spirit Pearl. Is it for Qing? Xianyuan Yingying looked at Li Lingtian. Although she did not know what Li Lingtian wanted the empty pearl for, she could roughly guess that it was for Xianyuan Qing's empty spirit body. Previously, Li Lingtian had mentioned that Qing's empty spirit body had not been fully activated and was missing something. Now, it seemed that it was obvious that he was fighting for the empty spirit pearl for Qing. Yes. Qing has an ethereal body. I thought about it and that ethereal pearl should be useful to her. Even if it doesn't work, I have to give it a try. This is a very good opportunity. I can't miss it easily. If I miss it, I'll regret it. Li Lingtian did not hide anything. It was not a bad thing anyway. It was just a risk. Moreover, this was also his personality. As long as he encountered a treasure, he would not let it go easily. Moreover, the treasure this time might be of great help to Qing. She would rather kill the wrong person than let it go. Since it's an empty spirit pearl, there are many experts competing for such a treasure. There are naturally many martial emperors and martial saints in there. Moreover, the empty spirit pearl is in the Feng nation, which is very far away from the Qingxian nation. Our strength is beyond our reach. If you encounter a super expert who sees through your identity, you will suffer a destructive blow. Furthermore, it might even affect Qingxian. Are you sure? Huangfu Yuyan looked at Li Lingtian seriously as she voiced out some of her questions. A few martial saint powerhouses were nothing but a treasure fight would easily involve hundreds of super powerhouses. Moreover, Li Lingtian's identity was very sensitive. Once he was exposed, he would definitely be the target of those supreme powerhouses. In that case, it would be a devastating blow to Li Lingtian. Even if Li Lingtian obtained the treasure, he would bring all the powerhouses back to Qingxian. By then, Qingxian would face destruction. Don't worry, there won't be any problems. Even if there is, isn't it just Qingxian? For Qingxian is nothing. At most, we can just leave this place. Li Lingtian replied with a smile. He knew that Huangfu Yuyan was worried about him. Similarly, it was not a good choice. On one side was Li Lingtian taking the risk, while on the other side was Qing. In their eyes, Qing was like their own daughter. Uncle, can you not go? Qingxing doesn't want the empty spirit pearl, she only wants uncle. Xianyuan Qingxing was a sensible girl now. Naturally, she knew that Li Lingtian was going on an adventure and it was a very dangerous one. Otherwise, her aunts would have advised him otherwise. She also knew that Li Lingtian had taken the risk to fight for the empty spirit pearl for her. It should be an important item that would be of great help to her. However, she did not want Li Lingtian to take the risk. Even if he did not cultivate, she did not want him to take the risk. Qingxing, be good. Do you really not trust Imperial Uncle? Imperial Uncle is the strongest. No one can defeat him. I will go and easily retrieve the Void Spirit Pearl. At that time, you will be able to cultivate quickly. When Imperial Uncle gets old in the future, you will have to take care of us. So, you have to listen to your aunt and the others. I'll be back soon. Li Lingtian reached out to caress Qing's little face and smiled. Only then did he have the feeling of home. He had a wife, a child, and a family to worry about. No matter when, no matter what kind of danger, the first thing to think of was your family. The concern of your family was the greatest encouragement and courage. Of course I believe Imperial Uncle. Imperial Uncle is the most powerful person in the world. But Qing doesn't want Imperial Uncle to take risks. Anyway, she doesn't want Imperial Uncle to take risks. Xianyuan Qingxing nodded, but she did not want Li Lingtian to take the risk. She would rather have Li Lingtian and not be able to cultivate herself than have Li Lingtian take the risk. Be good and listen to Imperial Uncle. Yuyan, I will leave the Battle God Legion in Qingxian. As long as you don't leave the palace, I will rush back as soon as possible. Li Lingtian turned around and left the living room without looking at Xianyuan Qingxing. If this continued, Xianyuan Qingxing would definitely cling on to him. It wasn't early now, so he had to go to Yinfenghua and make some preparations there. Otherwise, he wouldn't have the slightest confidence or chance when the time came. After leaving the room, he changed the aura of his entire body. His aura was extremely strange, and a faint demonic aura wrapped around his body. His appearance had also turned extremely demonic. If it were not for Tang Qingyue and the others, they would never have recognized Li Lingtian. There were quite a few demons in the Mystic Continent, but not as many as the ones in the Serenity Plains. It was normal for Li Lingtian to assume the appearance of a demon. In this way, he could shift the blame to the demons of Yuzhou. Thinking of this, he felt extremely relaxed. After doing everything, his figure strangely disappeared. Before he left, Longda had already secretly rushed to the Yinfeng kingdom. Although Longda's strength was only at the 7th level, his true strength was at the 1st or 2nd sky of the martial saint realm. Even a martial saint at the 1st or 2nd sky might not be able to kill him. Moreover, Longda's killer move, the poisonous fog, was a deadly nemesis for martial artists. Longda rarely used such a killer move because Li Lingtian did not want Longda to expose it. The girls were worried as they watched Li Lingtian disappear before their eyes. However, they did not stop him at all because Li Lingtian had his reasons for doing what he did. They could not help much but silently support him from behind. However, Qing was still a child and did not understand this. She could not stop crying as she watched Li Lingtian leave. Yinfeng Nation was one of the 12 upper-class nations in Moon Song Kingdom, and it was also the most powerful upper-class nation. Even a martial emperor powerhouse would need to fly for more than 10 days to reach a place hundreds of millions of miles away from Qingxian. Li Lingtian flew at a moderate pace with a pitch-black demonic sword beneath his feet. It was emanating a faint demonic aura, and one could tell at a glance that he was a demon powerhouse. The devil race was not powerful in the Black Continent, so humans did not have much dislike for the devil race. Moreover, there were countless experts who cultivated devil arts. Such devil cultivators were very normal. After leaving Qingxian, Li Lingtian felt even more relaxed and free. The demonic sword beneath his feet flew at high speed while he looked at the void in a relaxed manner. Although the empty spirit pearl had appeared in the Yinfeng Nation, not many people knew about it. Those who knew about it were all super experts, and most of them were gathered around the Feng nation. In the Qingmi nation, no one knew about it. Therefore, Li Lingtian rarely encountered powerhouses who headed to the Feng nation. Even if they did, it was not necessarily to seek the Void Spirit Pearl. As Li Lingtian flew, he admired the scenery below. Looking at the terrified expressions of countless low-level warriors, Li Lingtian recalled the time when he was still a warrior spirit and a warrior king and grandmaster. At that time, he was a newborn calf that was not afraid of tigers and dared to do anything. 10 years passed in a flash. During these 10 years, he had experienced countless tortures and experienced countless life and death situations. In 10 years, he had advanced from a martial apprentice to a martial emperor, becoming a supreme legend and creating his era. In the past, Li Lingtian never thought that he would one day stand at the top of the pyramid of powerhouses. He never thought that he would become a martial supreme. 10 years seemed like just yesterday. What could he do in 10 years? There was only one answer. A genius would become an existence that ordinary people looked up to in 10 years. Ordinary people would only waste 10 years of their lives and be 10 years closer to death. To Li Lingtian, the past 10 years were his legend. It was his legend. In just 10 years, he had achieved what others had achieved over hundreds or even thousands of years. There was not a single Li Lingtian among billions of people. Even in the entire divine martial continent, he was the only Li Lingtian. Although he had reached the martial monarch realm, he was still working hard. This was because the path of the strong was to advance or retreat. He had to improve at all times. Moreover, after becoming a martial supreme, he understood how shallow he was in the past and how terrifying this world was. Only by becoming a supreme expert could he control his own fate and even the fate of others. Boom! Unknowingly, Li Lingtian had entered a mountain range. He didn't know the name of this place, but it was already very far away from Qingmi. However, they were still countless tens of thousands of miles away from the Feng nation. As they flew, they recalled their thoughts, and without paying attention, they actually entered the depths of the mountain range. A destructive attack came crashing towards him. His instinctive reaction made his body move strangely and escape from this destructive attack. At the same time, killing intent appeared in his heart. Someone actually dared to attack him. Wasn't this courting death or what? Today's 30 tickets are the last one. Please give me monthly votes, recommendation votes, tips, and reviews. If there are more tickets, I'll give you 30 tickets tomorrow. Chapter 647, The Real Trash. 1. The destructive attack exploded in the air. Li Lingtian hovered in the air as he watched the destructive attack with a faint smile on his face. However, there was killing intent in his smile. He was angry. In the depths of the forest below, a surprised voice sounded. Li Lingtian had already spotted the other party in his divine consciousness. It was a young man dressed in a demonic red robe. There were a few middle-aged men not far away. The young man's body was filled with a terrifying aura. His cultivation had already reached the peak of the 8th heaven martial emperor realm. The few middle-aged men beside him seemed to be the guards of the young man in red. Their cultivation bases were all at the 9th level of the martial emperor realm. With 7 middle-aged men and a young man, even a first sky of the martial saint realm expert might not be able to do anything to them. These people probably saw that his cultivation was not high and took it for fun. Even a fool like Li Lingtian would understand this. Since he dared to play with him, he had to play with him properly. Since this world was governed by the law of the jungle, he would let these people know the meaning of the law of the jungle. Wouldn't he be courting death if he wanted to play with him? Not to mention a martial emperor, even the Windcloud martial saint of the 10 great martial saints had been defeated by him. Moreover, it was before he had broken through. If he had met the Windcloud martial saint when he had reached the 5th heaven of the martial emperor realm, he would definitely have died. Although he did not plan to kill the Windcloud martial saint, the increase in his strength proved how terrifying he was. Sir, this seems too much. Li Lingtian hovered in the air as the demonic qi around his body surged. He looked at the red-robed young man coldly and spoke indifferently. His tone was not as arrogant as before, but rather timid. "You're courting death. How dare you speak to our eldest young master like this? Why aren't you kneeling down and apologizing? Otherwise, you will die without a complete corpse." One of the 9th Firmament Martial Emperor powerhouses looked at Li Lingtian, who was in the air. Li Lingtian was still a 5th Firmament Martial Emperor and did not hide his cultivation. In a place like the Black Continent, even a martial monarch realm expert was nothing. If one's cultivation was low, they would be killed at any time. "I didn't provoke you, right? Could it be that this place belongs to you?" Li Lingtian said with a smile. Even if he had to fool these people, he would not lose his dignity. At the very least, he still needed to address them. Otherwise, he would lose too many points if he had to address them by his original name for a few trash. "This place isn't ours, but the strong are respected. You're unlucky, so you deserve to die." The 7 9th Heaven Martial Emperor powerhouses figures floated in the air and surrounded Li Lingtian. The young man was also in the air. He looked at Li Lingtian with disdain as if he was looking at a dead man. The look in his eyes made Li Lingtian feel uncomfortable. However, he had already made up his mind that this man was doomed. Even if the heavenly god came, he would not be able to save him. "Humph, devil cultivator, a useless devil cultivator. Destroy your cultivation and I'll spare your life. Otherwise, you'll die. Don't ask me why, because I see you as trash." The young man in red looked at Li Lingtian coldly as he spoke. He was like a king who stood high above and looked down at Li Lingtian with disdain. The first thing he said was for Li Lingtian to destroy his cultivation. For a powerhouse, destroying his cultivation was worse than death. This young man was truly vicious. Even Li Lingtian would either wipe out his opponent or let him go. He would not be as vicious as this young man who crippled his opponent's cultivation. "Destroy your own cultivation? You are destined to be destroyed. You are really unlucky to have met me. Otherwise, you would really be able to live. It's just that it's your misfortune to meet me. Tremble and regret, Li Lingtian burst into laughter. There was no point in playing around with such a useless person. The playfulness he had in the beginning had disappeared. He didn't want to waste any more time and affect his mood. He would just kill them and leave. They were just a few pieces of trash. "You don't know your place. Do you think you're a martial saint? Even if it's a martial saint, we'll still wipe him out. Since you won't cripple your own cultivation, then I'll let you know what it means to wish you were dead." A few middle-aged experts said fiercely. They looked at the red-robed young man, waiting for his opinion. "Kill him. I don't want to play anymore." The young man in red showed a look of impatience as he waved his hand, signaling for Li Lingtian to be killed. Dragon-slaying sword. One of the middle-aged 9th Heaven Martial Emperors could not wait to swing the sword in his hand. Instantly, a shocking sword radiance slashed down at Li Lingtian. Such an attack was used by the strong to deal with the weak. There was not the slightest bit of content and it completely ignored Li Lingtian. A 9th Heaven Martial Emperor could easily crush a 5th Heaven Martial Emperor. Naturally, there was no need for any heaven-defying ultimate moves. Die. Li Lingtian had no intention of making a move when he saw the sword ray approaching. When the powerhouses saw that Li Lingtian did not dodge or retaliate, they thought that he was scared out of his wits. However, they saw the disdain in Li Lingtian's eyes. When he looked at them, it was as if he was looking at a dead man. The look in his eyes was similar to when the young man in red looked at Li Lingtian. Seeing this gaze, the few experts were furious. At that moment, the sword ray had already arrived before Li Lingtian. The powerhouses and the red-robed young man could almost see Li Lingtian's destruction. However, what happened next made the eyes of the few experts freeze. They could not believe what they were seeing. Li Lingtian's aura underwent a strange change as a destructive sword will soared into the sky. After the sword will, Li Lingtian waved his finger like a sharp sword. With this wave, the power of heaven and earth appeared. His finger was like a sharp sword, carrying sword power to break the sword light. The sword power directly pierced through the sword light and slashed towards the expert who used the sword light. Pfft! With a muffled sound, the expert who used the sword light spat out a mouthful of blood. At the same time, his body was split into two. His vitality disappeared at this moment, and his eyes were filled with unwillingness and ashen ashes. The sky was eerily quiet. The remaining 9th-level martial emperors stared at Li Lingtian in a daze. The red-dressed young man was also shocked. A 9th heaven martial emperor had taken the initiative to attack and died just like that. Wasn't this white-dressed young man too terrifying? Could it be that this young man was pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger from the beginning? The strong are respected. Indeed, the strong are respected. Li Lingtian's eyes flashed as his figure disappeared in a strange manner. At that moment, the remaining 6 9th-level martial emperors had no chance to resist. From the beginning to the end, the few martial emperors did not move at all. However, the 6 martial emperor powerhouses revealed a look of despair in their eyes. Pfft! Pfft! A series of blood-spurting sounds rang out as his body fell rapidly. The young man in red watched as the guards died in an instant. He did not even know how they died. He was already extremely afraid. I don't want to play anymore. Trash. Li Lingtian said with a smile. With a grab of his hand, a strange force wrapped around the young man in red. The young man in red then flew toward Li Lingtian at high speed. However, it did not fly over on its own. Instead, it was captured by Li Lingtian. Floating 5 meters away from Li Lingtian, it was trembling in horror and its eyes were pleading. Please spare my life. I was blind and offended you. As long as you let me go, I will repay you. I am the first prince of Moonsong Kingdom. The young man in red begged for mercy. His face was begging, but his heart was filled with killing intent. As long as he let him go, he would call for experts to kill this detestable young man. Oh, it's the first prince of Moonsong Kingdom. No wonder he's so arrogant. Do you know who I am? Li Lingtian shook his head. He was utterly speechless at the young man in red before him. At a time like this, he actually used Moonsong Kingdom to threaten him. Wasn't this courting death? Even if he didn't directly threaten him, it was a disguised threat. Whoever offended the first prince of Moonsong Kingdom would definitely be courting death. Who would let him off at this time? He would be killed to silence him. Who are you? The young man in red was also curious. Who was so powerful that they could kill his guards without a sound? Li Lingtian. You can die now. Li Lingtian said coldly as he stared coldly at the red-robed young man before him, the so-called first prince of Moonsong Kingdom. Li Lingtian? Li Lingtian. Your Excellency, Supreme Alchemy Saint, I'm Qing Xian's young Emperor Li Lingtian. The young man in red was puzzled at first. He could not recall who Li Lingtian was at the moment, but he soon recalled the most powerful and terrifying legend of this period of time, Li Lingtian. Thinking of this, his heart turned ashen. Encountering this super alchemy saint, wasn't this courting death? He had even defeated the Wind Cloud Martial Saint of the 10 Great Martial Saints. He was just a martial emperor. What hope did he have? Ah! Before he could beg for mercy again, his entire body's vital essence was rapidly draining away. His bones felt as though they were being torn apart. As his vital essence was draining away, it was completely devoured by Li Lingtian's devouring light. In the blink of an eye, the cultivation of the young man in red disappeared, and so did his vitality. He couldn't be any more dead. Trash, he really is trash. Li Lingtian looked at the falling corpses of the martial emperor powerhouses and grabbed at the air with one hand. With a few swings, several storage pouches flew into his hand and he found a storage pouch on the red-clad young man. With a tap of his hand, a burst of flames turned the red-robed youth into ashes. His figure flashed, and he quickly rode the demonic sword into the distance. In the blink of an eye, he was already 1,000 miles away. What had happened just now was just a small interlude. He had just killed a few martial emperor powerhouses by using the demon race's skill to temporarily imprison them and kill them in an instant. Naturally, the young man in red and the few martial emperor powerhouses did not know about these skills. They had never heard of them before. Not to mention them, even many demon race powerhouses might not have heard of them before, let alone seen them. Chapter 648, Skyfire County. They flew at high speed and didn't meet any more ignorant fellows along the way. After all, there were not many people like the red-clad young man who could mess around with his backing. Fortunately, he had met Li Lingtian. If it were any other martial emperor powerhouse, they would have perished by now. Looking at the red-clothed young man's attitude and appearance, there must have been countless experts who suffered losses in the past. In the future, this red-robed young man would never appear again. However, he didn't know that he had already provoked the Moonsong Kingdom. In the capital of Moonsong Kingdom, Moonsong Sky City, the Imperial Palace occupied a radius of 10,000 miles. Within the Imperial Palace, there was dense spirit energy everywhere. In the entire Moonsong Sky City, the spirit energy in the Imperial Palace was the densest. In the depths of the Imperial Palace, a middle-aged man wearing a purple crown had an angry expression on his face. His entire body emitted a powerful aura, and he even had the aura of a superior. The third sky of the martial saint realm had a frosty look in his eyes. He was the king of the Moonsong Kingdom, Wanyan Nu. At this moment, his name was exactly the same as his appearance. His anger soared to the sky, and his dragon face was greatly shaken because the first prince of Moonsong Kingdom had just fallen. The destruction of the bead of life meant that the first prince had fallen. In the Moonsong Kingdom, there was actually someone who dared to attack the first prince and even kill him. This was undoubtedly a slap in the face for the Moonsong Kingdom. Even though he knew that he was the first prince who was showing off everywhere, he was still the first prince of the kingdom. He was extremely talented and had reached the 7th level of the martial emperor realm in just 50 years. This cultivation was definitely a heaven-defying genius in the Moonsong Kingdom. Damn it, it's too damn. This king wants to tear him into pieces. Wanyan Nu's dragon face was furious. He slapped his palm on the dragon throne. The purple gold dragon throne was shaken until it buzzed. If it wasn't for the fact that this dragon throne was reinforced by an array, the dragon throne would have disappeared. Under the king's fury, countless subjects were terrified. They didn't dare to speak, afraid of being unlucky. Everyone lowered their heads and didn't dare to look at Wanyan Nu. The destructive force raged, and the atmosphere in the entire palace was extremely strange. Your Majesty, have you found the person who harmed the first prince? At this time, an old man walked in from outside the palace. His face was calm, and he wasn't afraid of the king. After entering the palace, he bowed to Wanyan Nu and found a seat. His expression was still calm. Everyone in the hall heaved a sigh of relief when they saw the old man. Because of this old man, the king wouldn't be angry at them anymore. This old man was the consecrator of the Moonsong Kingdom. He was a super martial emperor and one of the 10 great martial saints. He was ranked 9th and was not much different from the Wind Cloud martial saint. Martial Saint Feng was ranked 8th while he was ranked 9th. However, their strengths were almost the same. He was ranked 9th among the 10 great martial saints, and his cultivation was extremely terrifying. No one had ever seen his true strength. He was extremely vicious and his actions were extremely strange. Venerable One, the first prince was killed just now and disappeared from the North Moon Kingdom. As for who killed the first prince, I'm not sure either. I'll send someone to investigate now. I'll have to trouble Venerable One when the time comes. When Wanyan Nu saw the old man, his expression slowly calmed down. He told him the time when his bead of life disappeared and the approximate location where the first prince died. He also understood that if he knew who killed the first prince, he would send a martial saint over. He might not be able to get Heavenly E Knight to appear, but if he encountered a super martial saint, he would definitely have to find Heavenly E Knight. He had to hold Heavenly E Knight back first so that he would not have to invite him again. If I can't solve it, I can make a move at that time. I am here to see the situation. This guy was defeated by a martial emperor. He's really disgraced the 10 great martial saints. A sinister smile appeared on Tianyi Knight's face. He had always been at odds with the Windcloud martial saint because of the ranking. He had always wanted to surpass the Windcloud martial saint, but he could not. This time, the Feng martial saint was defeated by a martial emperor powerhouse. Naturally, he would not let go of such a matter. Give the order to find that damned person. When the time comes, I will make him wish he was dead. Wan Yannu looked at the other experts below and said loudly. How could he not be furious that he had killed a super genius of the kingdom? Moreover, this genius was the prince of the kingdom and his own son. Naturally, Li Lingtian did not know that he had caused trouble. In fact, even if he did, he would not regret it. In any case, he had already provoked the kingdom and made countless countries covetous. It was nothing to provoke Wan Yannu. The demonic sword carried traces of demonic qi as it rapidly flew into the distance. After flying for a full 3 days, it finally arrived within the borders of the Yin Feng nation. After finding the approximate location of the Heavenly Fire Mountain Range, Li Lingtian flew to the nearest commandery in the Heavenly Fire Mountain Range. Tianyi County was a commandery under Yin Feng country. Even if it was a commandery, it was a commandery of a superior country. It was powerful and had a vast territory. Even the Qingmi country in the past could not be compared to this commandery. This was the strength of the superior countries. A commandery could be compared to a country. Young master, everything has been arranged. Among the 20 guards, there are 5 who have already roped in some experts. The condition is that they will receive your protection and hope to obtain your peerless grade Great Cyclic Pellet. Less than half an hour after Li Lingtian entered an inn, Longda found him and reported to him about the arrangement of the guards. Have you figured out the situation of the treasure fight this time? There were some things that he didn't need to care about, but he had to care about the treasures. He had come here specifically to figure out what was going on. Otherwise, it would be a waste to come here for nothing. Moreover, this period of time was very sensitive, and he was worried that the other kingdoms would plot against him. The ethereal pearl has been confirmed. There's already a Saint Array Master and 7 Array Dao Grandmasters who have confirmed it. They're all opening that ethereal space. The ethereal pearl will appear from time to time, but the time it appears is very short. There's also a powerful and mysterious restriction outside. Even a martial saint expert will find it difficult to obtain it. I have to break the restriction before I can really take out the Void Spirit Pearl. Moreover, there are about 800 martial emperor powerhouses so far. There are more than 100 Ninth Heaven martial emperors and more than 100 martial saint powerhouses. Even martial Saint Qingmi, who is ranked 5th among the 10 great martial saints, is here. Young Master is mainly paying attention to martial Saint Qingmi and the other 4 5th sky martial saints. There's one more person. We don't know his cultivation base or if he wants to fight for the empty spirit pearl. It's a young man in purple. He doesn't have any aura, but he gives off a dangerous feeling. General Long had heard about it during this period of time. His subordinates had already spread to every corner of the Moonsong Kingdom. Not only were there martial emperors and martial supremes, but there were also martial emperors and martial saints. These people never took action. They only gathered information and passed important information to Longda. They were also one of the most mysterious existences in the Freedom King dynasty. As long as they did not reveal their identities, even the people in Freedom King dynasty would not know about them. Only Li Lingtian, Longda and Martial Saint Ming Luo knew about them. These pieces of information were of utmost importance. After all, the powerhouses who were fighting for the treasure had to be aware of each other to avoid becoming the Oriole. Li Lingtian wanted to be the final hunter, not the Oriole or cannon fodder. In the Yin Feng nation, the moment the treasure appeared, countless spies had entered the Feng nation. The experts under Longda had also thoroughly investigated these experts. Although there were still many experts who hid their identities and did not enter the Skyfire County, at least most of the people were under their control. And, when the time comes, you guys will act according to the situation. As hunters, don't be Orioles. I will act from behind. Unless it's absolutely necessary, don't help me, lest you all fall along with me. Reduce the casualties. Use the smallest losses to obtain this empty spirit pearl. Li Lingtian replied calmly before he fell into deep thought. There were hundreds of martial emperor powerhouses and hundreds of martial saint powerhouses. These were only the powerhouses who had surfaced. There should be a portion of super powerhouses hiding. They were also existences who wanted to be hunters. Li Lingtian did not want to run into these superpowers. Unless he had no other choice, he should not fight against a fifth heaven martial saint. After all, it would be a life and death battle. Moreover, there were other super experts eyeing him covetously. Even if he won by a narrow margin, he would become cannon fodder for others. Whoever made the first move was a fool and the first person to die. During this period of time, don't worry about me. I will appear when the time comes. Do as you see fit. Just find out the whereabouts of the Void Spirit Pearl. After a long time, Li Lingtian opened his eyes and spoke to Longda. After that, he waved Longda away. Since the treasure did not appear, there was no need for him to appear. Even if the treasure appeared, with so many super experts, they couldn't die in a short time. Only when the real treasure fell into the hands of a super martial saint could it decide the outcome of the battle. The other martial saints and martial emperors were at the bottom. If a martial emperor wanted to die, he could compete for it. As long as one had some brains, they would not compete with martial saints for treasures. Even if they obtained the treasure, they would only be chased to death. There was no hope of enjoying it. He wanted to take advantage of this period of time to have a good rest and recuperate. He also thought that there were definitely many people like him. After Longda left, Li Lingtian went to a room in the isolated courtyard to rest. There were a few simple restrictions in the isolated courtyard to prevent any powerhouses from spying on him. However, in the room where he slept, there were more than 10 super arrays that could almost be called divine arrays. This was because the place where he slept could not be threatened at all. Otherwise, he would not be able to rest and cultivate in peace. I recommend the new book, Ancient Sage Myriad Ancient King. I welcome everyone to read and save it. I also want to vote for it. The new book needs everyone's support. Only with everyone's support can the new book go further. Chapter 649, Skyfire Mountain Range. In the room, Li Lingtian cultivated leisurely. After cultivating, he would either comprehend alchemy techniques, nourish treasures, or comprehend a few treasures that he had no control over. Or he could just sleep. The only thing was that he would not let himself get tired during this period of time. He would reach his peak mental state and prepare to fight for the treasure. The Skyfire Mountain Range was said to be endless. The entire mountain range was a world of endless flames. The power of the raging flames could be felt from thousands of miles away. The martial artists in Skyfire County had fire martial souls because only those with fire martial souls could survive in this place. This place was filled with fire spiritual chi. Warriors with martial souls of other attributes had no chance to cultivate here. The strong and dense fire spiritual energy made the flames in the entire mountain range stronger. The stronger the flames, the denser the fire spiritual energy. This cycle was enough to support any fire expert to cultivate here without affecting the spiritual energy foundation of the Heaven Fire Mountain Range. But during this period of time, countless super experts came to this Heavenly Fire Mountain Range. These powerhouses were all existences above the martial supreme realm. There were nearly 1,000 of them. Even though these experts had arrived at the Heavenly Fire Mountain Range, not many of them entered the mountain range. They were all waiting outside the mountain range. After all, the mountain range was a world of flames. Martial emperor powerhouses could enter it and survive for a few days. However, it consumed a lot of true origin. Unless they had no other choice, they would not enter the mountain range. However, there were countless fire-type powerhouses cultivating in the mountain range, waiting for the appearance of treasures. The appearance of the ethereal pearl caused countless experts to gather together. Almost all of them were in groups of 3 to 5. Boom! A shocking explosion sounded, and the earth trembled. However, countless experts completely ignored it because they had appeared in this place many times during this period of time. Almost every day, there would be many experts fighting here. When enemies met, or when they did not agree, they would fight. Experts had their own faces and personalities, but there were quite a few times when they clashed with each other, and shocking battles would occur at any time. Why, boom! Great battles occurred from time to time. Similarly, where there was a great battle, experts would die. In this place, even if they won by a narrow margin, the victor would still die because there were other experts who would beat them up when they were down. Today, just like before, countless experts were waiting outside the mountain range, but their divine senses and attention were looking inside the mountain range. Boom! A shocking spiritual energy soared into the sky. It was also an explosion, but this explosion excited all the experts. Because this explosion and spiritual chi appeared in the center of the mountain range, a huge and intense fire-type spiritual chi soared into the sky, just like the spirit infusion impact of a saint alchemist refining medicinal pills. The shocking fire elemental spiritual energy soared into the sky, and all the experts could see it clearly. In the depths of the mountain range, 8 powerful figures soared into the sky. They all surrounded the shocking spiritual energy. The spiritual energy did not disappear for a long time. On the contrary, it became stronger and stronger as the fire-type spiritual energy became denser. The 8 super experts were all array grandmasters. There was even a sacred array master among them. One after another, the 8 array formation grandmasters, array seals, fused together and quickly suppressed the spiritual energy. Walala. Chi, rumble. Rumble. In the mountain range, there was a shocking explosion, a mysterious strange sound, and the space trembled. The 8 super experts did not leave the spiritual energy. Instead, they cast spells in an attempt to suppress the spiritual energy. Seeing the scene in the depths of the mountain range, all the experts no longer hesitated. Their figures flashed and quickly flew into the mountain range. Countless experts were like moths to a flame in front of the heavenly fire mountain range, which was like a world of flames. They flew into the mountain range without any prior experience. However, he did not know that he might not be able to come out again. No one knew how many experts would die inside, but people would die for wealth, and birds would die for food. For this empty spirit pearl, they were all willing to take a gamble. After a short while, all the experts at the edge of the Sky Fire mountain range had disappeared. All of them had returned to the depths of the mountain range and were looking at the 8 super experts from afar. Chi. Crash. Time slowly passed. After a full half an hour, the 8 super array grandmasters were sweating profusely. Finally, with a soft sound, the shocking spiritual energy was suppressed in front of a huge array net. At the place where the spiritual energy disappeared, a huge light shield appeared. The light shield was 100 meters wide. It was impossible to tell what color it was, but there was a fist-sized bead inside the light shield. The bead emitted a faint mysterious aura. The aura was covered by the light shield and could not be transmitted out. All the experts could only know that this pearl was the empty spirit pearl. Thousands of experts revealed greedy looks in their eyes. They all stared at the empty spirit pearl, but no one dared to fight for it. We won, ve done our job. The rest is up to you. An array master said calmly. When the other array masters looked at this person, their eyes were filled with respect. From the looks of it, this old man was a sacred array master in the array path. Otherwise, he would not have received the respect of an array grandmaster. This time, They agreed to help open the spiritual energy that suppressed this place and get the empty spirit pearl out. However, all the experts paid 500 million spirit stones. Thank you, Lord Yuntian. When all the experts heard the old man's words, they all thanked him politely. Even if they did not know who the final owner of this treasure was, they did not dare to offend Yuntian in the slightest. One had to know that even if array Dao masters were not as heaven-defying as alchemy masters, their status was not much different from alchemy masters. This was because the array Dao of sects and countries were all created by these array Dao masters. Countless experts had Lord Yuntian's array Dao in their hands. They naturally would not easily offend this sacred array master. A sacred array master was almost on par with a sacred alchemy master. This ethereal pearl will automatically break the restriction in an hour. However, if we don't leave the Sky Fire Mountain range in an hour, we will return to the Sky Fire Mountain range. At that time, even we won't be able to get it out. Lord Yuntian said indifferently. After he finished speaking, his figure flashed and disappeared into the air. When he reappeared, he was already 100 miles away. Looking at Lord Yuntian's movement technique and his ability, they were shocked. This wasn't teleportation, because teleportation had spatial fluctuations. However, this Lord Yuntian ignored the space of 100 miles and directly crossed 100 miles. Such a method could only be used by array path super experts. Because array formation experts had good control over space, their movement techniques were naturally powerful. If Li Lingtian were to witness Lord Yuntian's methods, he would be shocked. He would never have thought that there was another person who had mastered the dimension-shrinking divine ability. This was also an innate ability that only a holy array master could control. Among billions of holy array masters, there might not even be one who could control spatial bending. No matter what profession it wasn't as if one could control the innate divine ability of that realm as long as they reached that realm. Li Lingtian had mastered the divine array diagram and could easily cross realms. Similarly, he had mastered the omniscient power of spatial shrinking. Furthermore, with the spatial banner and thunderclap wings, he could easily cross 500 miles. However, it consumed a lot of quintessential essence. It was several times stronger than this Lord Yuntian. However, he had never used such a divine power before. After Master Yuntian left, the other array masters looked at the empty spirit pearl and then at the experts present. They sighed in their hearts and quickly disappeared. Compared to Lord Yuntian, they were completely insignificant. They were smart people. Everyone here was a martial emperor or martial saint. There were even rumors that the powerhouses among the 10 great martial saints were here. With their cultivation base at the 9th level martial emperor realm, it would be a joke if they wanted to obtain the empty spirit pearl. Even Master Yuntian at the 2nd sky of the martial saint realm had no intention of fighting for the empty spirit pearl. Naturally, they were even less qualified. The empty pearl will appear in an hour. Those who want to get the empty pearl, kill them first. Or get out of the heavenly fire mountain range. A 3rd sky martial saint expert said loudly. He looked at all the experts with a sharp gaze. A 3rd sky martial saint's shocking aura wreaked havoc in the space. He looked at the other level 4 and level 5 experts without any fear. However, he did not look down on this level 3 expert because he was a super genius who could possibly enter the 10 great martial saints. Killing? Who the fuck is a fool? We will definitely have to wait until the empty pearl appears before we fight for it. Another level 3 expert also spoke loudly. His eyes were looking at the expert who had spoken earlier. It was obvious that his words were aimed at the person who had spoken earlier. Instantly, countless martial emperor powerhouses were stunned. This place was the world of martial saints. They were just existences that were courting death. 6 swoosh, swoosh. Whoosh, whoosh, in an instant, countless martial emperor powerhouses quickly flew into the distance. They said that it was better to leave in pain than to die without hope. He left far away and watched from afar. He did not really plan to leave. He also hoped that he would gain some benefits during the battle of the martial saints. There was no need to think about the empty spirit pearl. At the very least, he could obtain the treasure of a fallen martial saint. This way, his trip would not be in vain. In just a short while, there were only over 100 ninth heaven martial emperors and over 100 martial saints left in the center of the mountain range. Since you're courting death, I'll send you off first. The two level 3 experts immediately started fighting. The other experts watched as the two martial saints fought. Rumble. Rumble. The battle between the two-third sky martial saints was earth-shattering. The other martial saints revealed cold killing intent in their eyes. Pfft. Several super experts attacked at the same time. Instantly, the two-third sky experts disappeared. However, before they died, a destructive true origin power bombarded a fourth sky martial saint expert. The battle continued to spread. As long as there was an injured martial saint, the other martial saints would not hesitate to kill him at the same time. Instantly, the entire heavenly fire mountain range was like hell on earth. Chapter 650, Martial Saint Qingmi. Miserable cries rang out continuously in the sky fire mountain range. In this place, the lives of the super experts were extremely fragile. Even a martial saint would be instantly killed if he was not careful. For a moment, countless martial emperors and martial saints could not stand such a scene and quickly escaped. This place was no longer about fighting for treasures, but about killing, true killing. A 9th level martial emperor was simply courting death. More than 20 martial saints had died in just a moment. The speed of their deaths made countless martial emperors and martial saints in the distance tremble. Boom! The earth-shattering sounds of attacks colliding caused the entire mountain range to tremble. Heaven and earth trembled in the face of such an attack and destruction. Humph, a bunch of trash. At this moment, a cold voice sounded in the air. Suddenly, the space trembled. All the experts stopped at this moment. Even the few fifth sky martial saints from before looked into the distance in surprise. In the void, an old man in his 50s was floating in the air. His cold eyes swept across all the experts. Instantly, all the experts trembled. Martial Saint Qingmi. Martial Saint Qingmi, ranked 5th among the 10 great martial saints. It's Martial Saint Qingmi. Martial Saint Qingmi is really here. I didn't expect this old fellow to really come. This is going to be a good show. For a moment, all the experts exclaimed in disgust, looking extremely fearful. Martial Saint Qingmi, who was ranked 5th among the 10 great martial saints, was at the peak of the 5th sky of the martial saint realm. It was rumored that Martial Saint Feng was defeated by him in 3 moves. Not to mention Martial Saint Qingmi, who was ranked 5th among the 10 great martial saints, just the cultivation base of the 5th sky of the martial saint realm was enough to make all the experts present feel afraid. Even the other 4 5th sky of the martial saint realm experts looked at Martial Saint Qingmi with fear. Qingmi, long time no see. You're still so angry. Luo Feng, a 5th sky martial saint, greeted Martial Saint Qingmi with a faint smile on his face. In this place, even if they became opponents later, they wouldn't make a move immediately. Luo Feng. Qingjian. Lan He. Zhou Yunxiao. Martial Saint Qingmi glanced at the 4 experts in the sky and said indifferently. Although his tone was calm, there was a look of disdain. He was also a 5th sky martial saint, but his cultivation had already reached the peak of the 5th sky. Moreover, he was ranked 5th among the 10 great martial saints. His strength was shocking. Even if he met a 6th sky martial saint, he would not be afraid. Now, he naturally didn't put Luo Feng and the others in his eyes. The gap between them was like heaven and earth, they weren't even on the same level. As for the other ordinary martial saints at the 4th sky of the martial saint realm and below the 3rd sky of the martial saint realm, he did not even bother to look at them. In his eyes, the other martial saints were as easy to deal with as martial emperors. Brother Qingmi still remembers me. Lan He laughed loudly. Although Martial Saint Qingmi had looked down on him, he wasn't the slightest bit dissatisfied. Experts wouldn't get angry easily. When they really fought, they would kill each other. Did you guys discuss who this empty spirit pearl belongs to, or do you want us to fight it out and the winner takes all? Marshal Saint Qingmi looked at Lan He and said indifferently. A shocking aura burst out. Instantly, the entire world trembled. Countless martial saints and martial emperors left in a hurry. Their eyes were filled with shock as if they had seen a ghost. At this moment, a shocking grid appeared. The shocking grid pressed down on countless martial saints and martial emperors. The grid carried a destructive pressure. Ah. Pft. In an instant, countless martial emperor powerhouses died, and martial saint powerhouses were also injured. Countless martial emperors and martial saints were furious but did not dare to speak. In front of the strong were respected. They could only be crushed like ants. What is Sir Qingmi planning? Qjng Jian looked at Marshal Saint Qingmi. The other experts in the third or fourth heaven also looked at her. There were only about 30 experts left in this place. Those who could stay were experts above the third heaven. Otherwise, they would have been crushed to death by Marshal Saint Qingmi. This void spirit pearl is mine. Marshal Saint Qingmi didn't hesitate at all. His expression was calm as if the empty spirit pearl belonged to him. He didn't care about the gazes of the other martial saints. This was the tyranny of the 10 great martial saints. They didn't give anyone the slightest consideration or resistance. I'm afraid it's not that simple. Although all the experts were unhappy, they couldn't directly fight Marshal Saint Qingmi before the empty spirit pearl appeared. If Marshal Saint Qingmi targeted one of them, none of them would be able to restrain her. However, at this moment, a carefree voice appeared. His voice was calm, as if he was talking about something insignificant. All the experts looked towards the source of the voice. They were all curious. Who would dare to speak to Marshal Saint Qingmi like this? Wasn't this courting death? At the same time, Li Lingtian, who was hiding among the martial emperors, was surprised. He thought of Long Da's words. A mysterious young man whose cultivation could not be seen emitted a terrifying and threatening aura. He came to the Heavenly Fire Mountain range after Marshal Saint Qingmi arrived. When he arrived, he saw that all the martial emperors and experts had left. It was not appropriate for him to go and check on them, so he could only follow them. He had just heard the voice and looked in the direction of the voice. He finally saw the young man. He was dressed in purple and exuded a strange aura. It was impossible to tell his cultivation level, but he gave off a sense of threat and fear. All the experts saw the purple-clad young man. The purple-clad young man had a faint smile on his face as he leisurely walked in the air, completely disregarding the sharp gazes of all the experts. Beside him, there was another person, and that was Lord Yuntian. Seeing that Lord Yuntian was actually not far away from this young man, like a follower, all the experts were shocked. Could it be that you also want to fight for this empty spirit pearl? Marshal Saint Qingmi's expression changed. He actually dared to oppose him in front of everyone. Wasn't this a disgrace to him? However, when he saw how calm this young man was, he was stunned. Even he couldn't tell the cultivation level of this young man. Immediately, he suppressed the anger in his heart and only asked indifferently. This young master only feels that it's fun. This empty spirit pearl is not bad, this young master wants it. The purple-clad young man looked at the empty spirit pearl in the light barrier like an idiot and completely ignored all the experts. He was like a second-generation rich kid treating his servants. Hush! All the experts exhaled a breath of cold air. Wasn't this going against all the experts in the world? A young man whose cultivation could not be seen, even if he cultivated since he was born, he would only be at the martial honor realm. That would also be a heaven-defying genius. How could he be so arrogant in front of so many martial emperors and martial saints? He was simply an idiot. If he wasn't an idiot, then he was a heaven-defying expert. One had to know that he had Lord Yuntian by his side. Sir Yuntian had an extraordinary status in the Moonsong Kingdom. Even the 10 great martial saints were unwilling to offend him. However, at this moment, Sir Yuntian had become the purple-clad young man's follower. They were all extremely curious about the purple-clad young man's background. Do you want it? No matter how powerful the purple-clad young man's background was, this place was still the territory of the Moonsong Kingdom. He had no right to be arrogant in front of Fifth Heaven martial saints. As he spoke, his aura skyrocketed, and the space shook. A heaven-defying pressure pressed down on the purple-clad young man. Instantly, an overwhelming pressure descended like the might of heaven. Li Lingtian was shocked when he saw the pressure. Even the Wind-Cloud Martial Saint of the 10 Great Martial Saints had such a pressure. He did not expect these powerhouses who had not entered the 10 Great Martial Saints to be so freakish. It seemed that many of the true experts looked down on the title of the 10 Great Martial Saints. They cared more about their own cultivation. A shocking pressure swept across the space and directly pressed down on the purple-clad young man 100 miles away like a storm. However, the purple-clad young man didn't care at all. Instead, he raised his head to look at the invisible pressure in the sky. The corners of his mouth curled into a faint smile as he shook his head. He continued to walk forward step by step as if he was strolling in the back garden. This boldness and courage made countless experts feel envious. At the same time, all the cultivators were curious about what kind of person this purple-clad young man whose cultivation base could not be seen through was and what ability he had to ignore Zhou Yunxiao's pressure. Impudent. However, Lord Yuntian, who was not far away from the purple-clad young man, shouted coldly as he looked at the sky with a cold gaze. With a wave of his hand, a banner appeared in his hand. When he waved it, the space around him trembled. Thunder rumbled in the sky. Suddenly, muffled sounds rang out continuously. After a moment, the muffled sounds disappeared and the sky became quiet again. Zhou Yunxiao and the other martial saints exclaimed again. Even a fourth heaven martial saint might not be able to withstand the shocking pressure of a fifth heaven martial saint. However, it was caught by a second heaven array master. Moreover, the expression of the purple-clad young man was what shocked them. When he saw the pressure, he did not panic at all. Instead, he completely ignored it as if he knew that Sir Yuntian would be able to withstand this pressure. This way, all the powerhouses were even more shocked and curious about the purple-clad young man's identity and background. Li Lingtian's heart skipped a beat when he saw Lord Yuntian's banner break the pressure of a fifth firmament martial saint in the air. How ran Pan? He was extremely shocked. He didn't think that this Lord Yuntian would control the How Ran Pan. The How Ran Pan's greatest power was to dissolve the pressure of experts and ignore the shocking pressure of experts. It was also a super treasure of an array master. He didn't expect the How Ran Pan to actually appear on this array master. He became more and more curious about the identity of this purple-clad young man. At the same time, he also felt a trace of fear towards this purple-clad young man. Chapter 651, Sky Screen Golden Flame. How Ran Pan was a formation path treasure with a mysterious origin. Since this treasure appeared in the hands of Lord Yuntian, and this Lord Yuntian was with the purple-clad young man, then the purple-clad young man's identity was even more mysterious. Once again, Li Lingtian listed the purple-clad young man as an important opponent. He was also the biggest threat to the treasure contest. Yes, Lord Yuntian, what angle are you standing at? Should I stand at the angle of the Moonsong Kingdom's Holy Array Master or behind him? Zhou Yunxiao was shocked and regretful at the same time. Now, he could no longer get off the stage. The shocking pressure he exerted was actually easily resolved by a second Sky Martial Saint. It did not affect the purple-clad young man at all. Such an outcome naturally made him lose face. However, before he attacked, he asked first, which stunned all the experts. At the same time, he also admired Zhou Yunxiao. This was indeed a trump card. Because he gave himself a way out, he did not kill him because of Lord Yuntian. Even if others did not believe this reason, they would not say anything. As long as you give up on this empty spirit pearl, we will still be friends in the future. Otherwise, if you make a move, it will be awkward for us to meet in the future. Lord Yuntian did not answer Zhou Yunxiao's question, but talked about the empty spirit pearl. This sentence stunned all the experts. Like master, like slave. The purple-clad young man was arrogant. Now, even Lord Yuntian was so arrogant. Giving up the empty spirit pearl? What a joke. Marshal Saint Qingmi's expression slowly changed. The two of them had been singing for so long, yet they had ignored him. How could he not be angry? Moreover, he had said that he wanted the empty spirit pearl, but now, a young man had asked for it so directly. This was obviously going against him and fighting him for the empty spirit pearl. As soon as he finished speaking, he looked at the empty spirit pearl below and saw that the empty spirit pearl had already started to tremble. It was about to break free from the restrictions of the light barrier at any moment. His body flashed, and his shocking power skyrocketed. At this moment, heaven and earth shook non-stop. The fifth sky of the martial saint realm, ranked fifth among the 10 great martial saints, had completely displayed his shocking strength at this moment. 3,000 waters by the Qingmi River, all living beings in the Milky Way will be destroyed. The will of the Tao of Water. Marshal Saint Qingmi's expression was serious. He had no time to waste now. After killing the two of them, he could fight for the empty spirit pearl. For the sake of this empty pearl, he couldn't care less about anything else. He had to get rid of Sir Yuntian because Sir Yuntian was a holy array master and also the person who activated the empty pearl this time. If he didn't get rid of him, something would definitely happen. In order to prevent any mishaps, he even used the most powerful water will. One could imagine the killing intent in Marshal Saint Qingmi's heart. Similarly, Zhou Yunxiao, Luo Feng, and the others circulated their cultivation and their true essence to the extreme, ready to attack at any time. Between heaven and earth, the shocking will of the great path of water carried supreme destruction. Li Lingtian was a martial emperor powerhouse. It was already heaven-defying enough for him to control the 5 elements Tao intent. Even a martial saint powerhouse would be terrified by his Tao intent. However, now that martial saint had mastered the will of the great path, only he could understand how heaven-defying it was. If the two of them really fought, he would definitely not be a match for Marshal Saint Qingmi. He finally understood how heaven-defying the will was. It was even more heaven-defying for a martial saint to control the will. No wonder Marshal Saint Qingmi could become the 5th among the 10 martial saints when she was at the peak of the 5th heaven of the martial saint realm. It turned out to be the will of water. Seeing Marshal Saint Qingmi use a terrifying top-notch heaven-grade divine power and the will of the Tao of Water, Lord Yuntian's expression changed drastically. The purple-clad young man was no longer as carefree as before. His expression also kept changing. The 5th sky of the martial saint realm was not something they could deal with. However, the purple-clad young man did not panic at all. On the contrary, his eyes were fierce. He flicked his finger and a soft sound appeared in the sky. Swoosh, swoosh. Swoosh, swoosh. 4 figures appeared in the air. After they appeared, they came directly in front of Zhou Yunxiao and the others, forming a restraining force. Although the purple-clad young man and Lord Yuntian had solemn expressions, they didn't have the intention to retreat or panic. In the sky, the top-notch heaven-grade divine power cast by the will of the great path of water poured down like a Milky Way. In front of this Milky Way, the world trembled as if the Milky Way had burst its banks. The entire space was filled with the aura of destruction. The silver river surged towards the purple-clad young man and Lord Yuntian. In the world-destroying silver river, all the experts were like ants in the endless monstrous waves. This is the true will of water. In terms of the will of the Tao of Water, I'm miles away from him. Li Lingtian's figure retreated rapidly with a horrified expression on his face. To be able to use the Tao intent of water to reach this level of a top-notch heaven-grade divine power was simply a miracle. He did not know what area he would use to block or attack this move. Just as the destructive silver river was about to land on Lord Yuntian and the purple-clad young man, a loud voice sounded in the sky. Boom! The voice was like thunder, striking the minds of the experts. All of them were shocked and spat out a mouthful of blood. It was a sound wave attack. After the thunderous sound wave, a woman in black strangely floated in front of the silver river in the sky. She looked at the terrifying silver river and flicked her finger. A tiny flame shot toward the Milky Way. The tiny flame carried the power to burn the sky and hit the Milky Way. Looking at the flames that were so minute that they were out of proportion, all the experts felt uncomfortable. The Milky Way was powerful and terrifying, but the flames were so small. The collision of the two caused a heaven-defying change. The moment the flames appeared, Marshal Saint Qingmi's expression changed drastically. A hint of shock appeared at the corner of her mouth. Sky screen golden flame. Shan Province's Tian family. Marshal Saint Qingmi exclaimed. He cultivated the will of the Tao of water, and it was rare for him to cultivate it even among the countless martial saints. The nemesis of the will of the great path of water was the will of the great path of fire. He knew best what he needed to worry about and what he needed to pay attention to. He did not expect his nemesis to arrive. As the voice fell, the Milky Way of the will of the way of water collided with the tiny flame. Chi-chi. Chi-chi. A sizzling sound rang out in the sky. The dark-skinned woman was as arrogant as a goddess. Her eyes were cold, and her aura was no different from Tang Qingyue's. She floated gracefully in the air. The silver river in front of her quickly disappeared in front of the flames. At the same time, the flames also disappeared. Hush! All the experts were shocked at this moment and gasped at the same time. Marshal Saint Qingmi, who was ranked 5th among the 10 great martial saints, was easily blocked by the water will. What kind of concept was this? What was the background of this purple-clad young man? Zhou Yinxiao's pressure was neutralized by Lord Yuntian, and the water will of the 10 martial saints was easily broken by a woman. All of this was too terrifying. It had already exceeded the imagination of all the experts. Furthermore, Luo Feng and the others looked at Marshal Saint Qingmi curiously when they heard his last few words. Brother Qingmi, do you know their origins? Lan He looked at Marshal Saint Qingmi and asked softly. The situation wasn't right. The 4/5 firmament martial saints had already restrained them. Marshal Saint Qingmi was also restrained. Now, there was no hope for the empty spirit pearl. I'm not too sure either. I only know that the woman used the sky screen golden flame. The sky screen golden flame is the natal golden flame of the divine continent sky screen martial god. Marshal Saint Qingmi's heart was still trembling. No matter how powerful a martial saint was, he was not a match for a martial god. Moreover, this martial god was known as one of the most powerful figures in the divine continent. The Tian family had always dominated the divine continent because of the existence of this expert. This black-robed woman's cultivation might not be high, but the sky screen golden flame she controlled was too terrifying. The Tian family of the divine continent. Why are people from the Tian family of the divine continent here? The few of them were extremely shocked. They were still considered important figures in the Moon Song Kingdom of the Black Continent. Not to mention the Tian family of the divine continent, even in the Black Continent, they were existences that could be easily killed. For a moment, their hearts began to tremble. The Tian family of the divine continent? Could it be Tianhao's Tian family? Li Lingtian's divine sense was powerful and he could hear Marshal Saint Qingmi and the others' conversation clearly. He had met Tianhao from the Tian family back in Qingzhou and he seemed to be someone from the divine continent. When he heard the Tian family of the divine continent, he immediately thought of the Tian family that Tianhao mentioned. The geniuses of the divine continent were the true geniuses, not those useless chickens and dogs from other places. Just Tianhao was enough to make it difficult for him to move. Fortunately, he was powerful and saved Tianhao's life in the end. Now, he met someone from the Tian family again. This world was really small. He could meet familiar people everywhere. He looked at the black-robed woman. She was graceful and elegant, like a proud and cold goddess from the 9 heavens. She was extremely beautiful. He was used to Tang Qingyue being an icy beauty, so he didn't feel any disgust towards the woman in black. It was just that everyone had different personalities. Sister, I let you attack again. The purple-clad young man looked at the black-clad woman in the sky and said happily. The purple-clad young man completely ignored the other experts. He didn't care about the black-clad woman's arrogance and coldness at all. Don't cause trouble for me. The woman in black couldn't do anything to her younger brother. Although her tone was cold, they were biological siblings. Naturally, she wouldn't let her younger brother get hurt. Alright, why are you so long-winded like your mother? I'll leave once I get the empty spirit pearl and return to the divine continent. Is that okay? The purple-clad young man said indignantly. He looked at the void spirit pearl in the distance and missed the other martial saints. As he spoke, he continued to walk forward step by step. His carefree appearance made countless experts envious. He was indeed not simple to be able to be so carefree in front of so many super martial saints. Chapter 652, Tianyi, 1. The purple-clad young man walked forward unhurriedly, his eyes fixed on the empty spirit pearl. Lord Yuntian, who was beside him, took back the Haoran pan, but there was a green compass in his hand. Seeing this compass, even those experts who didn't know anything about arrays knew that Master Yuntian wanted to use this compass to break the restriction and take the empty spirit pearl away. Seeing this situation, some third or fourth sky martial saints were anxious. Luo Feng and Martial Saint Qingmi were also anxious. However, there were 4/5 sky martial saints on the other side, and they were being held back. Martial Saint Qingmi didn't dare to attack anymore. After all, the woman in black was floating in the air like a goddess looking down on the world. Fairy is from the Tian family of the divine continent. Martial Saint Qingmi spoke. At this moment, there was no retreat. They could only find out the other party's identity. If the other party wasn't from the Tian family of the divine continent, they could fight and take the empty spirit pearl. If the other party was really someone from the Tian family of the divine continent, then they had no choice but to consider it. After all, the experts of the Tian family of the divine continent were not people they could easily provoke. I'm Tianxin from the Tian family of the divine continent. The woman in black looked at Martial Saint Qingmi and said coldly. Then, she looked at the purple-clad young man. Her delicate body stood in the air without moving. After she finished speaking, she did not say another word. Alright, I don't want this empty spirit pearl. Goddess Tianxin sends her greetings to Lord Tianmu on behalf of Qingmi. Martial Saint Qingmi looked at the purple-clad young man and then at the black-clad woman. There was an exquisite golden flame between her eyebrows. The flame was golden in color and exuded a supreme might. Seeing Jin Yen, Martial Saint Qingmi retreated without hesitation. She greeted the woman in black and flew away quickly. The speed at which he left was even faster than the speed at which he came. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the horizon. Since Brother Qingmi doesn't want this empty spirit pearl, I don't want it either. Please send my regards to Lord Tianmu on behalf of me, Fairy Tianxin. I don't want it either. Please send my regards to Lord Tianmu on my behalf. I shall take my leave. I don't want them all. I don't want them either. In an instant, Luo Feng's group of 4 left. This change made all the martial saints and martial emperors unable to react in time. They did not expect that before the empty spirit pearl appeared, these powerful experts would leave. It was really hard to imagine. The other martial emperors and martial saints were watching from afar. They watched as Master Yuntian used the compass to break the restriction. Since even a few super martial saints had retreated, the others were no longer capable. However, they were all extremely unwilling. Although they did not want the empty pearl, they could still see how powerful it was. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Seconds passed by. Lord Yuntian kept casting spells. With the cultivation of a sacred array master, he alone was enough to open this array formation restriction. Just as the restriction was about to be broken, a discordant voice sounded. If you don't want this empty spirit pearl, then I'll take it. A calm voice came from afar. The appearance of this voice shocked countless experts. They all looked curiously at the source of the voice. They wanted to know who was so bold and how capable they were to provoke the Tian family. Even Martial Saint Qingmi, who was ranked 5th among the 10 great martial saints, had given up. There were also 4 5th sky martial saints who had given up. Could the owner of this voice be stronger than Martial Saint Qingmi or the Tian family of the Divine Continent? However, when they saw this person, they were all stunned. It was also a young man dressed in white. The young man was elegant and had a mysterious and elegant temperament. However, his faint temperament contained a domineering aura that could destroy the world. He walked step by step in the air with a calm expression on his face. There was a faint smile on his lips as if everything in the world was under his control. Elegant, otherworldly, domineering, his entire person was one with heaven and earth. Countless experts looked at the white-robed young man with envy. This was a person who could make all the women in the world fall for him. He was handsome but masculine, domineering but unrestrained. However, the white-robed young man's cultivation was only at the 5th heaven of the martial emperor realm. The white-robed young man was naturally Li Lingtian. When he saw that all the powerhouses had left, he decided to take the void spirit pearl with him no matter what happened. When the few super experts left, he secretly followed them for a while. When he found out that these experts had really left, he returned. The woman in black, the purple-clad young man, and a few level 5 guards looked at Li Lingtian. The purple-clad young man was jealous when he saw Li Lingtian's ethereal temperament and suave manner. He thought that he was suave, but he did not expect such a person to exist in this world. The woman in black frowned and looked at Li Lingtian in confusion. Are you sure you want this empty spirit pearl? The purple-clad young man stared at Li Lingtian as he spoke indifferently. His voice was calm but filled with killing intent. He was ready to kill Li Lingtian. He had to kill anyone who was better than him. That was because his name was Tianyi. He was the only genius in the divine martial continent. Those who were more outstanding than him would be destroyed. I don't think I said anything that I wasn't sure about. If I want something, I'll get it even if it's a star in the 9 heavens. Li Lingtian walked at an unhurried pace. In the air, it was as if he was strolling on flat ground. His movement technique was extremely elegant and he was not inferior to the purple-clad young man, Tianyi. His tone was overbearing. It seemed very slow, but he soon arrived in front of the 4 5th heaven martial saints. He looked at Tianyi coldly. For this empty spirit pearl, he would destroy everything. Soul Sky, come back. At this moment, Tianyi shouted coldly. Her voice was filled with anxiety and her perfect face was frowning. Even though Li Lingtian did not reveal any murderous intent, threatening aura or heaven-defying aura, she instinctively sensed something amiss. That was why she called Tianyi back immediately. Tianyi looked at Tianyi in confusion, but he still flashed and returned to Tianyi's side. His gaze was cold as he looked at Li Lingtian. He knew his sister's personality well. Tianxi's personality was cold and she would not make a decision easily. There must have been a reason for her to call him back just now. At this moment, it was obvious that her sister was afraid of this young man. Otherwise, she would not have stopped him. She did not understand what ability this 5th-level martial emperor young man had to make her sister fear him. His sister was at the peak of the 9th-level martial emperor realm and had inherited his father's natal golden flame. She would not be afraid even if she met a super martial saint. Martial Saint Qingmi was a good example. Martial Saint Qingmi was ranked 5th among the 10 great martial saints. Even her sister had broken through Martial Saint Qingmi's will of the way of water. This showed her sister's strength. Even he could defeat this young 5th heaven martial emperor. Could it be that you want me to treat you? Li Lingtian looked at all the martial emperor and martial saint powerhouses with a cold gaze. His body exuded a demonic aura and his appearance became even more demonic. He was so handsome that even all the women in the world would be jealous of him. His peerless charm and demonic appearance were enough to make all the women in the world envious. Between his eyebrows, 3 exquisite lotus-shaped runes flashed, and they were blood-red and demonic. Humph! Who do you think you are? Do you want us to leave just like that? Treasures are ownerless. Those with virtue will live in them. You're only at the martial emperor realm. Do you really want this empty spirit pearl? If I don't have it, I won't leave. What can you do to me? Ignorant. Instantly, countless experts were enraged. In the beginning, there were a few super martial saint experts. Later, there was a heaven heart from the divine continent's Tian family. Now, a 5th-level martial emperor was acting arrogantly in front of them and completely ignoring them. How could they not be angry? Seeing that countless powerhouses were resisting Li Lingtian, more martial monarch realm experts flew over. The divine martial continent's mindset was that they had the advantage in numbers. All the experts thought that they could unite in this way. Li Lingtian looked at the powerhouses and did not say a word. However, the expression on his face changed. A cruel smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. His eyes were cold as he looked at all the experts. Killing intent surged in his heart. How ignorant. He actually offended the experts of the world. Tianyi smirked when he saw how Li Lingtian had angered the crowd. Don't gloat. You only know that you don't like others. I told you to cultivate properly, but you're lazy. Tian Xian looked at his brother gloating and glared at Tianyi. His voice was cold like an ice mountain. Sister, you can't be. When Tianyi saw his sister's expression, his lips curled into a sly smile as he looked at Tian Xian with evil intentions. Get lost. Don't be a dog that can't spit out ivory. When Tian Xian saw Tianyi smile, he knew that it was not a serious smile. The siblings had been together for a long time, so they naturally understood what Tianyi meant. Hence, they quickly stopped him and glared at him. However, at the same time, he looked at the elegant young man. His demonic appearance made people's hearts tremble. However, they quickly eliminated this feeling. Because there might be a big battle later, and that young man was his opponent. If you don't seek death, you won't die. Li Lingtian's eyes were icy cold as he looked at the hundreds of powerhouses. His heart was filled with rage. Previously, when the few martial saints arrived, they all fled. Now that he was here, all the experts ignored him and did not put him in their eyes at all. This was the saying that the strong were respected. If he was a martial saint super expert, or one of the 10 great martial saints, these people would definitely not dare to come up. However, he wanted these powerhouses to understand that provoking Li Lingtian was more terrifying than provoking the 10 great martial saints. As soon as he finished speaking, he circulated the true origin in his entire body to the limit. A 5th-level martial emperor had the true origin and might of a 9th-level martial emperor. It even surpassed the might of a 9th-level martial emperor. Heaven and earth shook, and the aura of space was extremely oppressive. Chapter 653, Extermination of All Life, 1. Her long, flowing hair was blown by the strong wind, and her snow-white clothes rustled in the wind. With a flick of his divine sense, a palm-sized, exquisite, quaint zither appeared in front of him. He cast a spell and a spell appeared on the zither. Instantly, the palm-sized zither became 3 feet long. It was ancient and exuded a mysterious aura. All the powerhouses were puzzled and did not know what Li Lingtian was up to. This was because he couldn't tell what grade this zither was. It was just like an ordinary zither. At this moment, Tian Xian and Tianyi were also looking curiously at Li Lingtian and the zither. Li Lingtian stared into the void. Her eyes were filled with longing, as if she was missing her beloved. Then, his gaze slowly shifted to the body of the zither. Looking at the body of the zither, he thought of that woman, that unparalleled woman, the heavenly demon Princess Qingwu. His right hand gently caressed the Tianma zither, When he looked at the Tianma zither, it was as if he was looking at Qingmi. This gaze made the hearts of countless experts tremble. That inexplicable heart-wrenching feeling made people feel sad and reminded them of the time they had missed. When Tian Xian saw Li Lingtian's gaze, her icy heart trembled for some reason, as if she had seen the longing in Li Lingtian's heart. In his heart, he was curious about Li Lingtian. What kind of man was he? Clang! Li Lingtian's 10 fingers danced as he played the zither continuously. Instantly, the world became extremely quiet. Only a beautiful sound of nature drifted in the air. The sound did not dissipate for a long time. On the contrary, it condensed together. Clang! 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 In the sky, the sound of nature rang out. The beautiful lightness allowed all the experts in the world to enter a beautiful world. Countless birds and beasts flew above the heavenly fire mountain range like moths to a flame. Even if the flames turned them into ashes, they would not hesitate to come to the heavenly fire mountain range. 100 birds paying homage to the phoenix was the pinnacle of the zither music. All the experts were extremely shocked and they saw this scene. They did not expect the young man to have such wonderful guqin skills. However, they were on guard and circulated their true essence as they were worried that Li Lingtian would unleash a killing move. One sound, all things, soul, drunken. Li Lingtian's hands danced on the zither strings as a look of deep longing appeared on his face. His eyes were fixed on the zither strings, ignoring all the powerhouses outside as he focused entirely on the zither strings. Two-tone heaven and earth desolate annihilation. The sound of nature continued. None of the powerhouses could resist the beautiful music, but at that moment, Li Lingtian's zither music changed direction. Instantly, the beautiful music became desolate. The entire world was like hell on earth, like an ancient battlefield, with endless slaughter and death. Clang, clang, clang. Clang, clang, clang. The killing intent woke up all the experts. Tianyi and Tian Xian were also shocked. They were awakened from the beautiful music. However, it was already too late for all the experts to resist. Li Lingtian's 10 fingers danced in the air. With every flick of his fingers, an endless destructive zither music tore through the air. Ah, ah, ah. Ah, ah, ah. Countless martial emperor powerhouses died quickly. Blood flowed from their 7 orifices and their veins were cut. The zither music was formless, and there was nothing to hide or block. The closer they got to Li Lingtian, the more overbearing the music became. The music was playing among the endless martial emperors. Wherever the zither music went, it would affect 1,000 miles. All the martial emperor powerhouses within 1,000 miles died quickly. It was impossible for them to escape. True essence flowed out, and his veins were constantly destroyed. Finally, they felt despair. It was impossible for them to escape, let alone kill Li Lingtian. All the martial saints were bleeding from their 7 orifices. Their eyes were filled with shock and gradually became desperate. Only powerhouses above the 3rd heaven had the possibility of resisting. They had to circulate their cultivation techniques to resist Li Lingtian's zither music. Li Lingtian's fingers continued to move. Every time he did so, countless martial emperors would fall. The more he moved, the more martial saints would fall as well. Golden-scaled heaven and earth formation. At this moment, Yun Tian's figure flashed. He could only give up on the feng shui compass and return to Heaven Heart and his sister. He cast an array. It covered the 3 of them and looked at Li Lingtian in horror. At present, Li Lingtian's hair was drifting in the wind and the blood-red lotus rune on his glabella looked even more demonic. A 3rd or 4th heaven martial saint could withstand Li Lingtian's zither music, while a 5th heaven powerhouse would not have much of an effect on Li Lingtian's zither music. All they did was to circulate their cultivation technique and not be careless. You're courting death. A 4th firmament martial saint powerhouse could not afford to be careless when he saw countless martial supreme and martial saints dying. If Li Lingtian continued like this, they would not be able to remain unscathed. The only thing he could do was to kill Li Lingtian. Once he was killed, the zither music would stop. As soon as he finished speaking, a shocking light appeared. The light carried a destructive aura and it was hurled toward Li Lingtian. His speed ignored the distance between them and he arrived before Li Lingtian in the blink of an eye. 3 tones life extermination war. Li Lingtian's face turned pale and a trace of blood trickled down the corner of his mouth. It was already his limit to kill hundreds of martial emperor powerhouses and dozens of martial saints with his 5th heaven martial emperor realm cultivation. He had consumed too much of his true essence and divine consciousness. It was easy for second sound to kill experts below the second sky of the martial saint realm. However, he did not dare to be careless when dealing with a 3rd sky martial saint. Moreover, he was already in a difficult situation. There were still dozens of 3rd or 4th sky martial saints, 4 5th sky martial saints, Tianyi, and Tianyi. He didn't dare to be careless anymore. He could only kill these experts mercilessly. This time, he could only go all out. Even if his cultivation level fell, even if it meant destruction, he had to kill all the martial artists here first. With a wave of his hand, the world was filled with the aura of destruction and extermination. It was even more terrifying than the 3rd heaven of the 9 heavens of ice and fire. A zither note struck the light attack. The sound wave and the light collided regardless of the distance between them. Boom! The light disappeared, and the sound wave fell on the 3rd sky of the martial saint realm without leaving a trace. Ah! Arg! A miserable cry sounded as a 3rd heaven martial saint died. Ah! Another scream resounded through the world. This was the death of a 4th sky martial saint. As Li Lingtian's fingers moved, the 3rd firmament martial saint powerhouses began to fall. However, more blood trickled down Li Lingtian's lips and the expression on his face grew. His snow-white clothes were covered in blood, and he looked extremely miserable. However, his entire body was like a sharp sword standing proudly in the air, and an unyielding aura was revealed from his body. Every time he waved his finger, the sound waves and the extermination energy in the space would shake once. Similarly, at this time, an expert would die. No one dared to attack Li Lingtian without knowing who he was going to kill. After losing the initiative, he could only defend. However, the sound wave attack completely ignored defense. Whoosh! Whoosh! Finally, the sound of the zither fell. The 7 4th sky martial saints who had escaped had all died. The 4 5th firmament martial saints had blood trickling down the corners of their mouths as they stared at Li Lingtian in horror. At the same time, their eyes were filled with murderous intent. Ha, ha. Li Lingtian looked at the fallen powerhouses in the heavenly fire mountain range, then glanced at the 4 5th firmament martial saints, as well as Tianyi and Tianyi in the distance. He burst into laughter as blood trickled down the corner of his mouth. All the vital essence in his body disappeared, and the Tianma zither returned to his body. He floated in the air. He stared at the void and then looked at the empty spirit pearl below. You've been arrogant enough. You can go to hell now. The 4 5th firmament martial saint powerhouses wiped the blood from the corners of their mouths as they stared at Li Lingtian coldly. At this moment, Li Lingtian had lost his vital essence and the heavenly demon zither. To them, Li Lingtian was a weakling who could not retaliate and was at their mercy. I hope you don't let me see your desperate looks. Li Lingtian retracted his gaze and glared at the 4 5th firmament martial saint powerhouses. His gaze was like a furnace and the 4 powerhouses shuddered for some reason when Li Lingtian's gaze swept across them. Even so, the trembling made the 4 martial saint powerhouses even more furious. A dignified martial saint powerhouse was actually injured in front of a martial emperor powerhouse. Furthermore, he was frightened by a gaze. Wasn't this a joke? At the same time, killing intent surged in Tianyi's heart. He was the most outstanding expert in the world, but there was actually someone more outstanding and powerful than him. This was something he could not allow. All right, I'll let you die first. One of the super martial saint powerhouses was enraged when he saw Li Lingtian's arrogance at this point. He channeled his true essence and took a step forward before he threw a punch at Li Lingtian. To them, this punch of his was enough to kill a martial monarch realm expert without true origin. Boom! As the punch landed, the space shook and a figure was thrown out. However, everyone could see clearly that Li Lingtian was standing still while the one who was sent flying was a middle-aged man. Pfft! So, the middle-aged man spat out a mouthful of blood and his face turned pale. At the same time, a whooshing sound could be heard in the air. In an instant, more than 30 martial saint powerhouses had arrived beside Li Lingtian. One of them was holding the middle-aged man who had been struck. Young Master. Young Master D. The injured man came before Li Lingtian and bowed respectfully. The other martial saint powerhouses did the same. Look at them. Leave these trash to me. Look at how they tremble. Li Lingtian nodded lightly and looked at Longda seriously. Longda had taken a blow on Li Lingtian's behalf and used his own body to withstand the attack of a fifth heaven martial saint. Heaven Heart looked at the martial saints in front of him. Although they were all at the first or second sky of the martial saint realm, there were more than 30 of them. It seemed like they were all subordinates of this white-robed young man. And he was shocked. A master who could make his subordinates use their bodies to resist destructive attacks, how charming must he be? This young man in front of him had done it. His subordinates were willing to use their lives to exchange for his master's life. Chapter 654, For Symbols Sky Array. At the same time, Tianyi and Tianyi were shocked. At this time, he still said that he could make 4/5 sky martial saints tremble. He was either crazy or had heaven-defying abilities. It was obvious that this white-robed youth was not a lunatic. He should have heaven-defying abilities. The 4/5 sky martial saints were also extremely curious. However, they were more furious in their hearts. This subordinate will definitely keep an eye on them. 11 The martial saints beside Longda all said respectfully. They looked coldly at Tianyi and the others. All of them circulated their true essence to the limit. As long as their opponents made the slightest movement, they would launch a shocking attack. Today, either all of you stay here or take the empty spirit pearl away. Li Lingtian's cold gaze swept across the 4 level 5 powerhouses. A cruel smile emerged from the corner of his mouth as he looked at Tianyi and the others in the distance. With that said, he activated his divine sense and a pill appeared in front of him. He swallowed the pill. Immediately, the pill turned into true essence, and the originally exhausted true essence in his body instantly recovered to its peak state. This scene shocked the few super martial saints. They couldn't believe it because they didn't expect that there was a pill that could instantly recover Jin Yuan in this world. Naturally, they were unaware of Li Lingtian's identity. As a super divine alchemist, Li Lingtian could easily refine such a pill. Li Lingtian's true essence was restored. He grabbed at the air with one hand and made a cryptic gesture with his left hand. Suddenly, the space shook inexplicably as if it was summoned. The 4 super martial saint powerhouses were stunned when they saw this. Their bodies flashed as they dashed toward Li Lingtian. Die. Longda's guards naturally would not allow the martial saints to attack Li Lingtian. They immediately formed a fan-shaped encirclement around Li Lingtian. A shocking attack blasted out. Even if he was a first or second sky martial saint, the attack was still earth-shattering. If he did not block it, he would suffer a destructive blow. Just as he was about to stop them, a destructive metal will of the way appeared in front of Li Lingtian and wreaked havoc in the space. Rumble. Rumble. With a series of explosions, Li Lingtian's guards had already clashed with a few super martial saints. They attacked without any regard for their lives. Even if the 4 martial saints were heaven-defying, they did not dare to fight a martial saint to the death. With the appearance of the wood will of the Great Path, everything in the world was revived. Even the heavenly fire mountain range was full of vitality. Rumble. Pft. Pft. Explosions continued. The guards were all injured, but they did not let the few martial saints take a step forward. The will of the great path of water appeared, and huge waves surged between heaven and earth. The air was extremely humid, and everyone seemed to have entered an endless sea. Metal will, wood will, water will. 3 types of will. Tianyi's expression changed drastically when she sensed the aura in the air. She did not expect a young man like Li Lingtian to be able to control the will of the great path. In her astonishment, 3 types of will appeared. 3 types of Tao wills appeared on Li Lingtian's body, and she could not help but exclaim. The will of the great path was so magical that even a martial saint might not necessarily possess it. Only martial god experts could comprehend it. A martial saint powerhouse who controlled the will of the way was already heaven-defying among heaven-defying. Now, Li Lingtian, a martial emperor powerhouse, had mastered 3 heaven-defying wills. The 4/5 firmament martial saint powerhouses retreated at this moment, knowing how terrifying Li Lingtian was. They dared not delay any longer. They could only unleash their strongest attacks to deal with Li Lingtian. If they were to fight against these guards again, they would only be waiting for death when Li Lingtian unleashed his heaven-defying divine ability. Li Lingtian's guards heaved a sigh of relief when the 4 powerhouses retreated. They moved in a flash to make way for Li Lingtian. The fire will of the great path appeared. Endless flames soared into the sky in the heavenly fire mountains and surged toward Li Lingtian. The endless fire will of the great path burned the space. At this moment, Heaven Heart and the others were shocked beyond words. No one could have imagined that there would be a genius who could control 4 types of 5 elements Tao intent in this world. Moreover, such a genius was a martial emperor powerhouse. His future was limitless. It's impossible for him to control 5 kinds of Tao intent, right? Soul Sky said in a daze. At this moment, he had already admitted that he was a genius. However, the white-robed young man was not a genius. He was a monster, a true monster. Competing with this demon was asking for a beating. After he finished speaking, his expression changed drastically and became extremely strange. The Tao of earth, metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, 5 Tao intents appeared on one person. The 5 kinds of Tao intent represented the perfection of the 5 elements. 5 elements Tao intent perfection. It's actually the perfected 5 elements Tao intent. What a terrifying and heaven-defying will. Sir's prediction is true. I didn't expect that there would really be a perfected 5 elements Tao intent in this world. When the 4/5 sky martial saints sensed the 5 elements will in the space, their expressions changed drastically and became ugly. He was shocked because someone once said that if this world wanted to change, it would have to wait for the emergence of a strong practitioner of the 5 Tao wills. He did not expect to really meet a strong practitioner of the 5 Tao wills, and it was a heaven-defying strong practitioner. 5 elements great perfection of Tao intent. It's really 5 elements great perfection of Tao intent. Heaven Heart's expression changed drastically, and the expression in his eyes kept changing. Tianyi turned around and looked at Tianyi. His eyes were filled with confusion. His sister, who had always been calm, was actually so shocked. The entire process seemed to take a long time, but the real time was only a short 5 seconds. 5 seconds was still too long. If he didn't have guards and protection, he would have died countless times in 5 seconds. However, when the will of the 5 elements was unleashed, the world changed and the space trembled. For symbols sky array, boundless heaven and earth. When the 4 super experts saw the appearance of the 5 elements will, a strange sign appeared in the world. Such a strange sign appeared and they were shocked. They had no confidence to catch it alone. He no longer had any confidence, so he could only use the strongest joint technique of the martial saint, the 4 symbols sky array. The 4 symbols sky array was known as one of the most magical arrays among the 5 elements in the world. Even if a martial monarch realm expert joined forces to cast this array, they could still kill a martial monarch realm expert. Now that 4/5 firmament martial saints had joined hands to cast this formation, its power was indescribable. One after another, the 4 martial saints unleashed their true essence to the extreme. 4 pillars of light appeared between heaven and earth, and the 4 pillars of light quickly fused with the spells. Tian Xian was known as the number 1 genius of the Tian family in the Divine Continent. She was also one of the few peerless beauties in the Divine Continent, and she was an icy beauty. She had thought that a 9th heaven martial emperor could match a 5th heaven martial saint, so she did not put a young man in her eyes at all. However, she knew that she was wrong now. That young man in white was the real genius. With her current cultivation, she could not join the battle at all. She was not qualified to come into contact with a battle of this level. This was a magical and tragic battle, a battle between geniuses and legends. He looked at Li Lingtian with a burning gaze. Even though he was injured, his graceful figure remained unyielding as he hovered in the air. A destructive will of the Great Path appeared around him. The appearance of 5 kinds of will of the Great Path caused the world to tremble. At this moment, he stretched out his hand. His appearance was elegant and graceful. Every movement made the girls in the world fall for him. A 5-colored ball of light appeared in his palm. After the ball of light appeared, the will of heaven and earth condensed. Whoosh! A gentle breeze appeared and the light orbs dispersed, transforming into 99 5-colored spiritual pearls. The 5-colored spiritual pearls revolved around Li Lingtian and began to spin on their own. It seemed to be circulating in a disorderly manner, but it carried a mysterious and profound trajectory. There were endless array formations and the truths of heaven and earth inside. You are very honored. This is the first time I have used the 9 heaven stars with killing intent. Some time ago, Martial Saint Feng of the 10 great martial saints was defeated by my 9 stars in the sky. Not long after, I used this move again. However, after this move, I really started a massacre. The 5 elements of heaven and earth, the will of the 5 elements, the 9 stars in the sky. Li Lingtian muttered to himself as he looked at the 4 pillars of light in the distance. The 4 pillars of light had already formed a light shield and the spirit QJ in the world was rapidly being integrated. It emitted a dense destructive aura. He did not care about the array formation of the 5 elements at all. The 4 symbols sky array could not escape the restraints of the 5 elements. Therefore, he had mastered the 5 elements Tao intent and the heaven and earth reincarnation technique, thus he had mastered the 5 elements of heaven and earth. With that, he pointed his fingers and formed an invisible domain within a radius of 200 meters. He was the true ruler within this 200-meter radius. The 5-colored spiritual pearl was still operating in an orderly manner. It was as if an independent world was operating. The 99 5-colored spiritual pearls represented the stars in the world. When Li Lingtian unleashed the 9 heavenly stars, a small world appeared in the macro world. There was no conflict between the large and small worlds. On the contrary, the macro world's will and trajectory, as well as its will, quickly entered the small world. At that moment, no one exclaimed in surprise but was stunned. The warrior sage powerhouse beside Longda looked at Li Lingtian with admiration. Heaven Heart, Heaven One, and Lord Yuntian were all looking at the independent world of the 9 stars in the sky. Li Lingtian walked forward step by step. Although it seemed slow, it was actually very fast. In the blink of an eye, the 4 symbols sky array had already collided with the 9 stars in the sky. The scene of the end of the world appeared. The world only trembled in front of the 2 destruction. Boom! Boom! Rumble! Walala! Kacha, kacha! Rip, rip! Rumble! Destructive explosions continuously sounded in the sky. The ground trembled and collapsed, and the Heaven Fire Mountain range also quickly collapsed. Shocking flames soared into the sky. Even from tens of thousands of miles away, one could see the destruction in the Heaven Fire Mountain range. Sensing the destructive aura, countless curious experts who had rushed to the Heaven Fire Mountain Range could only look at the destruction in the Heaven Fire Mountain Range in horror. Chapter 655, The Power of the 9 Stars in the Sky. Whoosh. Whoosh. The experts at the center of the Sky Fire Mountain Range quickly retreated. Even Long Da and the others retreated 100 miles, but they were still destroyed. However, Long Da and the others did not dare to stray too far away from Li Lingtian, as he had to defend Li Lingtian at the first sign of danger. Skyheart Tianyi and Lord Yuntian looked at the destroyed world with shock in their eyes. Li Lingtian's true essence was rapidly draining away from his body. His eyes were filled with a blood-red glow and he looked devilish and terrifying. The 9 heavenly stars had already reached their limits. The 200-meter-wide domain and the stars revolved, continuously bombarding the 4-symbol sky array. A storm descended, and the world seemed to have reached the end of the world. On the other side, the 4 supreme martial saints were not having a good time either. Even though the 4-symbol sky array that the supreme martial saints cast together could destroy the world, it was still restricted by Li Lingtian's 9 heavenly stars. Among the 5 elements, they had lost in terms of inborn. However, they had the advantage of having a 5th firmament martial saint and numbers. They were still in a stalemate with Li Lingtian. For a moment, the 2 destructive attacks were evenly matched. The sky and the earth cracked, and the Heavenly Fire Mountain Range was quickly destroyed. At this moment, the only thing Li Lingtian and the 4 powerhouses could do was to exhaust their opponent's true essence. Whoever could last the longest would be the final winner. Shoo! The 4/5 Sky Martial Saints let out a breath of cold air at the same time. Victory was in their grasp now that they had finally managed to hold off the 9 Sky Star. As long as they could exhaust Li Lingtian's true essence, victory would be theirs. No matter how powerful a martial monarch realm expert was, he was only a martial monarch realm expert. In terms of true energy, it was impossible for him to match a martial saint realm expert. This was the most terrifying expert they had ever met in their lives. He was the most heaven-defying monster that forced them to join forces with a martial emperor realm. Even if they encountered a 6th or 7th sky martial saint, they had never been in such danger. Seconds passed. The changes in the Heavenly Fire Mountain Range attracted countless experts to come and watch. However, when they saw the destruction in the Heavenly Fire Mountain Range, they were incomparably shocked. What's going on inside? Could it be that something strange has happened in the Heavenly Fire Mountain Range? Could it be that a heaven-defying treasure has appeared? What exactly happened? Countless martial artists who did not know the situation were extremely curious, but they did not dare to get too close to the Heavenly Fire Mountain Range. His eyes were filled with fear. The Heavenly Fire Mountain Range within a radius of 100,000 miles had actually collapsed like this. There must be some terrifying existence inside. Shoo! It said that a heaven-defying expert is fighting with 4/5 sky martial saints inside. We don't know what exactly happened. What? A battle between martial saints can destroy the world? That's impossible. The battle between the martial saints won't cause the destruction of the Sky Fire Mountain Range. Those who did not know the situation naturally did not believe in the great battle of martial saints. Even martial saints were not so heaven-defying. Even if a martial saint was heaven-defying, it was impossible for him to cause the destruction of the Heavenly Fire Mountain Range. If they knew that there was a martial monarch realm expert fighting 4 martial monarch realm experts inside, they would be so shocked that their jaws would drop. Blood trickled down the corner of Li Lingtian's mouth, but his eyes were sharp. He knew better than anyone else that he could not kill 4/5 sky martial saints with the 9 heaven stars. The reason was that his cultivation was too low. If his cultivation was a little higher, he could break the other parties for symbols heaven array. This was the difference between a martial saint and a martial supreme. It was already heaven-defying to be able to stand on par with 4/5 firmament martial saints. If it was just a 5th sky martial saint, he would definitely be able to eliminate him. However, he could not do anything to 4/5 Sky Martial Saints when they joined forces to cast a heaven-defying formation. At the same time, he also understood that the other party could not do anything to him. The only thing he could do now was to fight with his true essence. His genuine vitality was so powerful that it defied the natural order. He was at the 5th heaven of the Martial Emperor realm, and his cultivation was as thick as the 3rd heaven of the Martial Saint realm. At this moment, the expressions of the 4/5 heaven Martial Saints gradually changed. It seemed that their plan to deplete Li Lingtian's true essence was not right. A martial monarch realm expert's true origin was actually so heaven-defying that he could persist until now. Puff! Li Lingtian spat out a mouthful of blood. The 4 martial saints were relieved as Li Lingtian's true essence had reached its end. Even though they had little true essence left, they were still in a much better state than Li Lingtian. They would definitely be able to exhaust their true essence before Li Lingtian ran out of true essence. Heaven Heart looked at the battle in the distance and was shocked. Although that young man was a match for her, she was still shocked. If this young man was not a match for her, he would definitely defy the heavens in the future and become one of the top figures in the divine martial continent. Give me your true qi. The powerhouses present could see Li Lingtian's true essence running out, and they could already see the end in their hearts. At that moment, Li Lingtian shouted. None of them could understand the meaning behind Li Lingtian's words. It was a simple sentence, but they were completely baffled. Only Long De and the others understood Li Lingtian's intentions. Immediately, a dozen martial saint powerhouses flew toward Li Lingtian and hovered within 5 kilometers of him. Could it be that they want to give him their true qi? Heaven Heart and the 4 martial saint powerhouses looked at the dozen or so martial saint powerhouses and were shocked and in disbelief when they recalled Li Lingtian's words. In this world, even if it was the Enlightenment method, it was impossible to give true essence to others unless it was forcefully applied during cultivation. Moreover, Li Lingtian was about to use up his primordial qi when he unleashed his heaven-defying divine ability. It was impossible for him to receive any more primordial qi. However, what happened next stunned the few experts and the Heaven Heart sisters. I won't die. At least, no one in the divine martial continent can kill me. It's even more impossible for you. Devouring light. Li Lingtian stared coldly at the 4 powerhouses before him. Even at this moment, he was still standing proudly in the air with an air of arrogance and dominance. A spell seal was cast, and the 9 stars in the sky quickly circulated. Then, he waved his hands, and several hand seals crisscrossed in the air. Then, he grabbed at the air with both hands. Instantly, heaven and earth shook, and the spiritual energy in the space surged. The dozen or so martial saint powerhouses quickly released their primordial qi, and the primordial qi surged toward Li Lingtian. Spirit qi and true essence entered the 9 sky stars, and the 9 sky stars became even stronger. Li Lingtian's true essence was also recovering rapidly. Pft, pft. More than a dozen martial saint realm experts quickly lost their true essence and spat out a mouthful of blood. However, the loss of true essence stopped halfway. Li Lingtian's goal had shifted to taking the heaven and earth spirit qi for himself. Seeing this scene, all the martial saint powerhouses were extremely moved. This was because they knew that Li Lingtian's rate of recovery by absorbing quintessential essence was faster than his rate of recovery by absorbing spirit QJ. However, for the sake of their cultivation base, he had stopped absorbing quintessential essence. Even at this time, he would not let his subordinates get hurt. The more dangerous the moment, the more one could see a person's character and character. A master, in a moment of danger, could still think for his subordinates at the first moment. Who could have such boldness and quality? Similarly, the rest of the group could tell what Li Lingtian was trying to do and were all astonished. The astonishing spirit qi was continuously converted into true essence, and Li Lingtian's depleted true essence had been completely restored. However, his face was getting paler and paler. The 4 martial arts saints had already resigned themselves to their fate. They could not defeat Li Lingtian and could only fight with their true essence. Now that his cultivation base had recovered, their true essence had reached its end. They did not expect Li Lingtian to possess such a heaven-defying almighty divine power apart from the elixir. He could absorb heaven and earth's spiritual QJ and convert it into true essence. Die. Li Lingtian's eyes were icy cold as he circulated his true essence to the maximum. Blood trickled down the corner of his mouth. The 9 heavenly stars quickly pressed down on the opponent's 4 symbol sky array. The domain-like world of light instantly broke through the 4 symbol sky array. The 4 super martial saints entered the 9 sky stars. Their Jin Yuan had already reached the end. The destruction of the 4 symbol sky array had completely exhausted the Jin Yuan of the 4 martial saints. After entering the 9 heaven star, they could not even move their fingers. Moreover, they were even more terrifying because Li Lingtian's consciousness was everywhere in the 9 skies of stars. He could kill them with a single thought. In this place, Li Lingtian was the master. No. Li Lingtian made a grabbing motion with one hand and 4 martial saint powerhouses floated in front of him. He could destroy them with a single thought because he was the master of the 9 skies. But at this moment, Heaven Heart exclaimed. She wanted to stop Li Lingtian from killing the 4 martial saints, but she knew how terrifying Li Lingtian was. She could do nothing but despair. When Li Lingtian heard Tian Xian's voice, he turned to look at her. He saw her cold and noble temperament, but her eyes were filled with despair. When he saw this cold arrogance, he thought of Tang Qingyue's appearance. When Tang Qingyue was in the Azure continent, she must have been like this, with helpless and desperate eyes. Thinking of the 3,000 cycles of waiting for Qingwu, he couldn't help but look at the void with a trace of longing in his eyes. Get lost. At this moment, his killing intent had not disappeared, but a trace of fluctuation appeared in his heart. With a cold shout, all the vital essence in his body erupted. With a wave of his hand, the 4 martial saints disappeared from the 9 stars in the sky and were quickly thrown into the distance. The 9 stars in the sky also disappeared in an instant. The 99 5-colored spiritual pearls returned to his hand and finally disappeared. At the same time, he spat out another mouthful of blood. His body swayed, and he looked extremely miserable. The 4 martial saint powerhouses and Heaven Heart's trio were astonished by this action. They did not expect Li Lingtian to let the 4 martial saint powerhouses go. Logically speaking, Li Lingtian's killing intent had not disappeared. Under such circumstances, he could have killed the 4 martial saints with a single thought, but he had let them go. Although Long De and the rest were somewhat puzzled, they could only carry out whatever Li Lingtian did unconditionally without doubting his intentions. Chapter 656, Mysterious in Grotto-heaven Finger. After the 4 martial saints were thrown out, they arrived in front of Heaven Heart and the others. Lord Yun Tian made a grabbing motion with one hand, and the 4 figures that were flying backward stopped. Blood continuously flowed out from the corners of their mouths. The destructive aura between heaven and earth slowly calmed down. However, at this time, the heavenly fire mountain range had been completely destroyed. The raging flames shook the sky, and the endless world of flames continued to run amok. The empty spirit pearl floated in the air, and the flames avoided the empty spirit pearl. Li Lingtian only calmed down slightly after tossing a pill into his mouth. Looking at the ethereal pearl floating in the air, he used his divine sense and a stream of light appeared between his eyebrows. When the stream of light appeared in the air, the golden light was extremely dazzling. A mystical array diagram appeared before Li Lingtian. The array diagram exuded a mysterious aura and the world fell silent before the diagram. Divine array diagram, divine array diagram. It really is a divine array diagram. Lord Yun Tian looked at the divine array diagram in front of Li Lingtian and his expression changed drastically. In the end, it turned into excitement as he stammered out the words. He was a sacred array master, so he naturally understood ancient treasures and even more so the ultimate treasures of the array path. The divine array diagram in front of Li Lingtian was not faked at all. Naturally, he was shocked and excited when he saw it. Your array Dao is not bad, but it's still quite lacking. Li Lingtian raised his head and looked at the shocked Lord Yuntian in the distance. A holy array master was a powerful and heaven-defying existence. He could create countless array Dao above the heaven level and could even create divine array formations. However, Li Lingtian had already surpassed the level of a holy array master and was now able to use divine level array formations with ease. You are a holy array master? Lord Yuntian was stunned and anger surged in his heart. He had been loyal to the array Dao all his life, yet someone actually said that he, a saint array master, was lacking by quite a bit. Wasn't this shameless? However, he was even more shocked when he saw Li Lingtian's incantation gestures and the changes in the divine array diagram. This was because Li Lingtian's technique and dermic incantation were extremely mystical. He was definitely a powerful and heaven-defying holy array master. Therefore, he could not help but ask, his tone filled with disbelief. Holy array master? Li Lingtian looked at Lord Yuntian with a confident smile before he shook his head. However, this time, he shook his head. He could see the disdain on Li Lingtian's face as he disdained the title of Holy Array Master. What he meant was, what was so great about a Holy Array Master? In front of him, the Holy Array Master was weak. Seeing this, Lord Yuntian's expression changed drastically. He even looked down on a sacred array master. Could it be that he was a divine array master? A divine array master who could casually cast a divine great array and could come into contact with an ancient divine array? He did not ask any more questions and neither did Li Lingtian. Instead, he focused on casting the technique. Swoosh. At that moment, Li Lingtian cast the last incantation gesture. A golden pillar of light appeared on the divine array diagram. The pillar of light contained an endless mystical array. At the same time, the beam of light shot towards the ethereal pearl floating in the air. Chi-chi, shishi. A sizzling sound was emitted from the surroundings of the empty spirit pearl, and the space was constantly trembling. Hearing this voice and the situation in front of the void spirit pearl, Lord Yuntian was shocked. His expression kept changing, and finally, it became ugly. As a holy array master, he actually did not notice the mysterious restriction around the empty spirit pearl. He also did not expect the restriction to be so terrifying. On the other hand, Li Lingtian seemed to have known about it all along. Could this be the difference between the two of them? Had this young man really surpassed a holy array master? Crash. The restriction disappeared, and the empty spirit pearl was exposed in space. Immediately, the world was filled with an ethereal aura. The endless spiritual chi became without any attributes. This world seemed to have returned to the primitive world. The spiritual chi was heavy but without attributes. The world was clear and quiet, and the flames had calmed down. Empty spirit pearl. This is the power of the empty spirit pearl. What a good empty spirit pearl. This is the ethereal aura. Void spirit chi is indeed magical. Instantly, everyone exclaimed. Li Lingtian made a grabbing motion with one hand and the ethereal pearl returned to his hand. He then cast several incantation seals to seal the ethereal pearl before storing it into the divine dragon ring. The ethereal aura also completely disappeared at this time. The battle for the treasure had ended. The heavenly fire mountain range was destroyed. Countless martial emperors and martial saints were almost all destroyed. Tianyi, Tianyi, and a few martial saint realm experts looked at all of this in desolation. Lord Yuntian's eyes were burning as he stared at the divine array diagram in front of Li Lingtian. However, his eyes were filled with disappointment in the end because the divine array diagram had already recognized its master and merged with Li Lingtian. No one could use it anymore. Just as everyone was about to leave the heavenly fire mountain range, their faces changed drastically. The expression on Li Lingtian's face changed. With a flick of his divine consciousness, he kept the divine array diagram. The rest of the powerhouses followed Li Lingtian's gaze as they stared at the void with a grave expression. A grid appeared in the air, and a cold wind blew. The world turned cold. Even on the heavenly fire mountain range, Li Lingtian and the rest could feel the chill as if they had arrived in the netherworld. Even though Li Lingtian had entered Underworld City before, he could not help but shudder at the cold aura. The sudden change made everyone present extremely solemn. Those who came here were all here for the empty spirit pearl. Now that the empty spirit pearl was in Li Lingtian's hands, another battle was inevitable. Li Lingtian, I'll take you back to be punished for killing the first prince of Moonsong Kingdom. In the void, an old man in his 50s appeared in the grid. The old man's aura was shocking. It was as if a true god was looking down at the people below. His cold gaze swept across the crowd before finally landing on Li Lingtian. It appeared that the old man did not know who Li Lingtian was. After sizing him up, he finally confirmed that the young man in white was Li Lingtian. However, his eyes were filled with confusion. This white-robed young man was only at the 5th level of the Martial Emperor realm. How did he kill the first prince and his guards? However, the aura on Li Lingtian's body was the aura left behind after he killed the first prince. Capture me back? Ignorant. I am the young emperor of Qingxian, the ruler of the Shaoyao Empire. Killing that trash was just a convenience. Li Lingtian's face revealed a look of disdain. What kind of joke was this? He was the young emperor of Qingxian, the ruler of the Shaoyao Empire, yet he was still captured by others. He was simply ignorant. Since such a war had occurred in Qingxian, it meant that they had already started to separate from Moonsong Kingdom. Yet, this guy was still so ignorant. Li Lingtian? Could it be that legendary figure from Moonsong Kingdom? Lord Yuntian, Heaven Heart, and the others muttered to themselves. They had never known who this young man was. Now that his name was called out, they finally remembered that legendary figure. Now, he understood that only a legendary figure could be so heaven-defying. You recording death. Heavenly E Knight's face turned cold. A martial emperor actually dared to oppose him like this. Wasn't this an insult to him? With that said, he waved his hand and a devastating force of suppression crashed down on Li Lingtian. The devastating attack shattered the space and arrived before Li Lingtian in an instant. True Dragon Body Protection. Heavenly Devil Region. Li Lingtian's heart trembled. He understood that the Elder's arrival was not for the empty spirit pearl but for the first prince. He regretted not wiping his aura away at that time. Otherwise, he would not have provoked this heaven-defying warrior sage powerhouse. Looking at the old man's attack, his heart trembled. This old man's cultivation base was much stronger than the Wind Cloud Martial Saints. With one strike, he could destroy the world. The true essence in his body circulated, and the true dragon body protection cycle was activated. The limitless feather coat was also activated, and the heavenly demon domain was displayed. Boom! With a loud explosion, the destructive attack landed on Li Lingtian. A supreme martial saint powerhouse had a powerful cultivation base and was extremely powerful. His speed was also extremely fast. He completely ignored the distance between them. A martial emperor powerhouse did not even have the chance to retaliate. The destructive attack landed on Li Lingtian's body, destroying the heavenly demon region and the true dragon's body barrier. His entire body was thrown up like a kite with a broken string. In the end, he fell into the raging flames and was completely devoured by them. The martial emperor powerhouse did not even have the chance to retaliate against a supreme martial saint powerhouse's attack. Li Lingtian was already injured from the previous battle with the martial saint. Now, even if he used his defense, he would still be hit into the flames with a single strike. His life and death were unknown. I heard that the empty spirit pearl is also here. All of you are going to die. I'll let you die knowing what's going on. I'm the Venerable Tianyi, ranked 9th among the 10 great martial saints. Tianyi Knight looked at Tianyi and the others and said coldly. However, when he looked at Heaven Heart, his eyes revealed an evil smile. He kept sizing up Heaven Heart, and his mouth kept making clicking sounds. Seeing this, Heavenheart's expression turned even colder. The four guards' cultivation had been sealed and their true essence had been exhausted. They were inferior to an ordinary martial artist. In the eyes of Heavenly E Knight, they were all martial emperor powerhouses and could be killed casually. You're courting death. Humph. Heavenheart snorted coldly and the cold aura around him changed. He looked at Heavenly E Knight coldly and the power of flames in the world started to tremble. He quickly rushed towards her, his left hand grabbing at the endless flames in the void, and the invisible power of the flames entered in front of him. She made a mysterious gesture with her right hand and slowly placed it between her eyebrows. The golden rune flame on his forehead emitted an icy chill. Then, a strange flame appeared on his finger. The flame flickered non-stop as if it was alive. Golden flame. When he saw the flames in Tian Xian's hand, his heart trembled. He didn't know Tian Xian's background, but he knew a little about the mysterious alien flame in the world. Moreover, the golden flame was one of the most mysterious flames in the ancient times. It was recorded in ancient books. However, he did not expect that this black-robed woman, who was as cold as an ice mountain, would have such a terrifying golden flame. In his shock, he circulated all the true essence in his body. Mysterious Een Cave Finger. Heavenly Een Knight did not dare to be careless at this moment. A person's reputation was like a tree's shadow. Even if the woman in front of him was only at the 9th level of the martial emperor realm, she controlled the golden flame. The terror of the golden flame made him not dare to be careless. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.